Okay, I think we have Brandy in the house, even if we don't see her. So I'm going to get us started, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 regular meeting of the Brattleboro Selectboard. We know the meeting has been properly warned because, Peter, did you confirm that?
I can confirm it right now. The meeting was properly warned.
Awesome. I was going to say, thank you. I was going to say, because we met at 5:30 to discuss a couple of, in executive session to discuss a couple of employee matters. And so it is returning for us. So welcome once again. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of February 16th.
I move to approve the minutes of February 16th, 2021.
Great. Excuse me, I'm just admitting more people into the room. And I did have a request from someone to make a comment on our minutes, and it's a little unusual, but I don't see a problem with doing that. So, oh, Ian?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I know you have a motion on the floor, but we have a hand up, so I'm just going to take that hand, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Kurt, you're welcome to turn on your camera and say hello. Hello.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I too was curious about whether it's proper. It doesn't seem like anyone from the public ever has a comment on the minutes. But if it's a motion, I suppose it could be part of the debate. I object to the minutes as they are drafted because they do not properly record the origin of the discussion from the about cow power. I had written to the board a couple of times and to Peter Elwell and Tim at the same time, and been assured that the resolution of 2018 would be addressed at the same time as the Energy Committee recommendation for it. But because of a miswriting of the agenda, no one on the board was aware of the origin as coming from the 2018 resolution until Peter made it clear to them. So I think that should be included. It was on the agenda because of persistence of Brattleboro common sense, my actions in particular, and also that Tim mischaracterized my remarks as attacks on Daniel and Elizabeth, even though Daniel admitted my comments were fair and Elizabeth welcomed being called a penny pincher. So I wish the record to be corrected. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, my bad, I didn't see Ian.
Ian, you have first go, and then Daniel.
Yeah. I don't ever get to speak really as my position on the board as the clerk. So as the select board clerk, I stand by the minutes how they are, and I think that the board can decide whether they approve them or not through a vote.
Certainly. I have a comment, but Daniel, please.
Yeah, I guess I was wondering if Kurt had some specific lines of the minutes he wanted to amend in some way, like them numbered. It would be helpful to know specifically which line he believes is inaccurate. Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. Well, I want to say that there was a number of things that Kurt mixed in there for those comments. One of them, I just need to point out that the minutes are a record of what happened. I mean, by law, they are simply a record of what actions were taken. There's no requirement for them to have as much detail as Jessica has provided for us and Ian has approved for us as the clerk. But they're helpful for anybody trying to get a sense of the meeting. So I really think they're excellent minutes overall. But so you would never alter a minutes to make something appear that didn't happen in a meeting. So that's a very strange take on how minutes work. So that's not how minutes work, in my opinion. And then, well, the other things are precise things that happened in the minutes, and I don't know, I didn't see anything that was inaccurate myself. If board members think that there was inaccuracies in the minutes, then we can take that up as a body because there are minutes. So, or you can vote against them, but we could certainly address a line by line thing if you think that would be productive.
Tim?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't.
No,
the
that's
black
okay.
against the dark
I
background.
know, and I have my compression gloves on, so it's hard to see my hand. I took minutes for a long time, and it can be really tempting to do this when you have knowledge of a topic. I think we have to leave these alone because I think minutes are just so dry in their moment in time. They are exactly what transpired in the meeting. They can't be about what transpired in the formation of an agenda, for instance, or the submission of an item. So even if you feel the item's misrepresented, the only way to really handle that is to address it in the meeting, the minutes from tonight's meeting where the conversation takes place. The minutes from the last meeting or the meeting where this took place has to stay exactly as it was, even if we have knowledge of discrepancies in the topic itself.
Thanks. So where do I go from here?
I think you have to take a vote because I think it's fine, but there's no way the minutes can be changed, I don't think.
Yeah. Liz and then Peter.
And it's consistent with what Brandy said, we would take a vote, but the minutes from this meeting would recognize Kurt's statements and record them, and therefore they would be on the record.
Yeah. Thank you, Kurt. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. Does that satisfy your thinking, Daniel, as well?
Yeah, that's fine by me. Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make clear that in addition to being proper, what the way Brandy described it, and I think the consensus I'm hearing from among you about how to deal with this, what Liz said about how Kurt's comments can be reflected next time because they happened in this meeting, and you'll see those minutes next time. All of that is true, and it's also the law. So I just want to make sure that we're grounded in, it's not just sort of a better way to handle this moment. It's what you're obligated to do, because you can't create a record of the last meeting that somebody might think is how it should have gone. You need to have the record of the last meeting be how it actually went. And then, as you all have pointed out, this meeting will reflect that that concern was raised.
Certainly. Yeah, thank you for that reiteration. So motion on the floor to approve the minutes of February 16th. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
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 5-0. Thank you. Next is chair's remarks, and very short. Today, I briefly stood outside with some candidates in the very cold temperatures. It was 10 or might have been 11, but quite windy this morning when I was out there, and it brought back a lot of memories of the 3 times that I've done that too. But more importantly, it brought back a lot of memories of doing that for the first time with Brandy. And I just wanted to just sort of acknowledge that and sort of feel the love of that moment from 4 years later, because we were elected together. So Brandy, this is not your last meeting, but it's your penultimate. Is that the proper use of the term? So I just wanted to call that out as it's going to be a transition, because no matter what happens with tonight's results on the election, Brandy won't be with us any longer, and I will miss that. I just want to say that. And Peter is going to speak to more transitions concerning our fire department, which are very big and important for us all to recognize. Peter?
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, so I just wanted to take a moment here officially. I know it's had newspaper coverage and appropriately so, but we are going to have a transition that is decades in the making, literally. So Chief Bukasi, after 43 years of service to the Brattleboro Fire Department as a full-time employee and 45 years of service overall, his first 2 years were on the call staff. He is retiring on April 1st. We have been through a vetting process with Lenny Howard, who has been Mike's right hand at the fire department for the last 5 years. Done a great job as assistant chief, and I'm happy to say I've appointed Lenny effective April 1st. So we've begun the transitional process, and there will be additional actions to be taken within the fire department as now the assistant chief position gets filled, and then a captain slot gets filled, and so on. So these are important moments for the department where people who have not just served the community well, but prepared themselves for promotion get an opportunity to step up to higher levels of responsibility. But as that happens, and as we congratulate Lenny and the others who will be promoted, we want to make sure to pause and fully thank and recognize Mike, who 43 years is just an amazing record of service. And the last 14 of those has been as our fire chief and emergency management coordinator. And during that time, the Wilder Block fire, the Brooks House fire, and the Tropical Storm Irene impacts, all were major challenges for the department and impacts for the town. And at the two fires, literally, sort of iconic buildings as part of our downtown could have been lost, but instead were saved because of the work that was done by the fire department so that those two buildings could be rebuilt. And there was no loss of life at either one. So just an amazing career. And thank you, Mike, wherever you are. I'm not sure you're in this meeting this evening. We don't have a fire department item on the agenda, but as a community, we will find ways. It's hard during COVID to properly recognize folks at these moments, but we will do that, and we will definitely come together better post-COVID with a proper thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
I'd like to just, if you don't mind, use my chair privilege at the moment to just tag on something there. It's been a huge privilege to work with both Mike and Lenny, and to be part of the transition team, if you'd like, in this process. And I want to point out a trait that both of these men have that we should all celebrate, I think, and that is that they're both very interested in lifting up those around them, the people that work under them, and calling out when people do the right thing over the easy thing. And I'm just so pleased that this transition will be smooth and from one capable pair of hands to another capable pair of hands. So thank you. We now have, well, actually that was the start of select board comments and committee reports, if you don't mind. Anyone else have comments? Daniel.
Brandy was first.
Oh, sorry,
It's
Brandy.
the gloves, I'm telling you.
Glove, I'm gonna keep an eye on
Get a
that.
bit of neon on them or something.
Well, hot pink, maybe, yeah. I also was gonna use tonight, even though it's not my last meeting, but it kind of feels like it is, to say that it was weird not to be running for office today. And it did remind me of when Tim and I ran. Basically, we ran together and were elected together. And that was a pretty awesome time. I don't know if the weather was much better. I think it was snowing and wet. And Robin was with us, Robin Morgan, which was awesome. And it's been a really incredible 4 years to be in any office I can imagine at any level, but municipalities have not been isolated from the last 4 years of political excitement, we'll say. And so it's been interesting, and it's going to be hard and sad. Yeah, some wonderful stuff has come our way. And I also want to say that thank you to Mike. That is an incredible record, especially when you list off those very specific incidents that really shaped and changed our town in their own ways. And as far as Lenny is a fantastic human being to interact with. I've never seen anything but kindness, thoughtfulness, gentleness. And I think that this is going to be a wonderful thing for the town. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Brandy. Daniel.
I guess I'll pile on the Lenny and Mike party. Yeah, congratulations to them both. You know, all that Brandy says there is true and was said before. I actually wanted to thank the folks at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. I had a pretty traumatizing accident yesterday where I fell down my basement stairs and dislocated my left shoulder. And it hurt a lot more than I thought dislocating your shoulder does. Anyway, I'm lucky to live very close to the hospital, so my wife zipped me over there, toot sweet, and I got seen so quickly. The staff took really good care of me, got me fixed up, and it didn't hurt too much, thanks to some sort of wonder drugs. And then they said, and now make an appointment with orthopedics. I'm like, I've already had that appointment. And so whilst the American healthcare system is something that is, you know, perpetually kind of frustrating to me, on like the insurance level, on the care level here, it was wonderful. I did not have to wait 6 hours in the emergency room. You know, I got right in and got right out, and I appreciate it. And you know, I've been catching up on some movies today, and I'm feeling all right now. And members of the community reached out to me as well, and you know, were nice to me, which I appreciated. I was on the ballot today, but not at the polls. In some ways, it was like the best timed accident because, as Ian's wind burn attests, it was chilly out there. But I thank all of the town staff and volunteers who make this election happen, and it's currently still happening for another 25 minutes. So if you haven't got out to vote, you can zip down to the Legion right now. And I look forward to the results. We will see what happens. So that is my thank.
Thank you, Daniel. Ian.
As Daniel mentioned, yes, as you can see by my face, I just spent the entire day outside in this weather. You know, I just want to take one moment to just really thank Hillary, Francis, the town clerk, the Board of Civil Authority, and all the volunteers. You know, you guys are just so great. And the time and energy that you give to the town to make these elections safe and secure in a pandemic is, I am so appreciative of that. And, you know, you've got 25 minutes. So if you're watching this and you haven't voted, get on down there.
Thank you, Ian. Liz.
I just wanted to mention that it's my understanding that Daniel's injury is a recycling related injury, and I wanted to commend him for his sustainability actions.
Wow.
And I also want to mention, as I always mention, that COVID is happening in Windham County, and we all need to continue to be mindful, because while some people are being vaccinated, it would be very sad for people to get sick when the hope of a vaccine is just around the corner for many of us. So I was very dismayed to see that Texas opened everything up 100%, and I'm glad that Vermont as a state is being more cautious.
Thank you all. All right. Let's move forward into public participation. That is the time when anyone can make a comment, ask a question that might be addressed most likely later, unless it's super simple. And to do so, you find your participants button at the bottom of your screen, and that'll bring up a list. And somewhere in there will be a button for a hand, like people are raising their hand probably just for demonstration. It always confuses the chair because I'm kind of old-fashioned. So. But in the new software, evidently, sometimes you have to hunt for it in more, I'm told. But I got the old-fashioned.
Or reactions in mind.
Reactions. Thank you. Thank you. So that's for, you're welcome to raise your hand and participate in anything that is not appearing on the agenda tonight. If you do have something for an agenda item, please wait until that agenda item. And tonight there is no consent agenda, so we won't have to worry about anything in that regard. And I see a hand up, and it's Gary Stroud. So welcome, Gary. You can join us. There you are.
Hello and good evening, everybody. How are we?
Good. How are you?
Oh my goodness, it was great to see everybody out there campaigning. Ian, I didn't know you were that tall.
Yeah.
Either I'm shrinking or I was like looking up. I was like, wow, he's a tall glass of water. So I was like,
There's a couple candidates who are pretty tall out there today.
yeah, well, everyone's standing tall out there in my book, and you guys are looking awesome. And I'm wishing you guys the great of luck. And Daniel, my heart goes out to you. I was just up there today at BMA, so I might have missed you. Probably, I'll be doing some PT up there myself, along with some other rigorous things going on. But I also wanted to thank Mike down at the fire department. I was in a fire myself down in 2008 at 17 Elm Street, and they were outstanding. And I tell you, the caring, even to this day, whenever I pass by there, they always ask, how you doing? Is everything okay? Is there anything you need? How can we? And it's like that family orientated type of community loving, caring. Even then, they remembered it back then. And they still asked it. And I said, I'm doing great. What can I do? And I miss the spaghetti dinners that they used to have down there and everything. And it's like, I'm just going to say, Mike, I'm going to miss you. Hope you find you already picked out a hobby. If anything down the road, you want to do some fishing, once I get myself up and running, I'll be looking forward to showing you a couple of good fishing holes out there. Brandy, you're going to be missed, but I'm sure you're going to be a strong force out there as well, too, working alongside. And I'm looking forward to working with the new select board members in the coming time and helping out and doing my part. Once I get myself back together myself, too. And I have some other good news. I was reading in the paper that next week on the 8th, starting at 65, anyone with low immune deficiency can get their shots for the COVID. And I said, well, I just turned 57, so I'm not quite there yet. Don't let the gray fool you. But yeah, definitely is something positive too that, and I think kids at 16 years of age also. So please, people, sign up, get aboard, get those shots so we can get going and get back into a full regimen of getting this town and country back together. And I'd like to say thank you. And again, good luck, guys. I love you. And I thank you all for your support.
Bye, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. So I don't see any further hands up. Unless the board has any other comments, I'm going to move on to item 7, which is unfinished business. The first of which is very important report from town staff about possible next steps of community safety review team's recommendations. Peter?
Thank you. So this has been a long time in the making to come to this place. And the one overriding point I'd like to make about the things I'm going to offer and what I hope will be your action this evening is that the moving from the raising of concerns, and then through the review and the formation of the recommendations, and then the receipt and presentation of the recommendations to this moment of some additional information to help us move forward. That process is very much just the beginning, right? We're now at a moment where we will move forward together through something that will literally continue on and on. Elements of it will require years to implement. And other elements of it may be able to be done more quickly. Much of it is very complex and will require extensive collaboration among lots of different parties. And so the overarching theme, if you will, for what I'm going to offer here in the next few minutes is I'd ask that you, the select board, and that we as a community view this as a body of work rather than as particular pieces of actions to be taken. There will in fact be lots of different pieces and different actions as this unfolds. But if we focus on the totality of it and the importance on getting started, then I think we have our best potential together of creating positive impact going forward. So in that spirit, I'd like to make clear what the staff's report that was in the backup this past weekend and what we're offering to you this evening, what it is and what it isn't. It is intended to be additional information that will shed some additional light on the recommendations that have been offered in the Community Safety Review Team's report and recommendations. It is not meant to replace or recast those recommendations. In fact, we were really careful to make sure that in the listing of 41 separate identifiable actions in the materials that are before you this evening, that the recommendations themselves are verbatim as they were stated in the report. We thought that was very important. The board on January 19th, after hearing the presentation from the Community Safety Review Team and having some initial discussion on this about the report and the recommendations, what you asked us for was to bring additional information from town staff. And so that is the intention, and I believe the reality of what we're doing here, to provide context within which we as a town government and we as a community can move forward with the work. In a couple of minutes, I will have some additional summary remarks to make about the written materials and about what staff is recommending in terms of the way forward. I'd like to pause for a moment though and lay the foundation for that with an acknowledgement that I'm going to read. And I'm going to read it because it is set forth in the written materials for this evening, but I know that a lot of folks attend the meetings and haven't read the materials. And one thing that was made very clear to us in the report and in the first 4 of the 41 recommendations that are set forth in the report is the importance of sincerely acknowledging the harm that people have experienced and the necessity of addressing the issues that have been raised and committing to a personal reckoning as well as an organizational and community reckoning with this work. And so I believe, based on the importance of this as the foundation upon which the rest of it is built, that it's important to express it fully and not summarize it in the way I will summarize the rest of the memo. So if you forgive me for reading. And I would say one other thing. In prior select board meetings, there have been expressions of this type made by individual select board members. I'm offering this evening on behalf of myself and on behalf of town staff because we have tried to respect our role in this process. There's been a tremendous amount of community engagement with the board in this whole process dating back to last June and on, right up to this moment. And as staff, we have chimed in up until now. We're going to be pretty much the focus, I think, of this discussion this evening. But up until now, we have tried to stay in the wings on this and enter into the conversation only at the appropriate times when we felt like we could help the select board move the work forward. And so this is my opportunity to offer this acknowledgement and commitment that is the foundation upon which we intend to build the rest of our work in this area. We acknowledge that centuries of white people holding power in our country, including here in Vermont and in Brattleboro, has perpetuated systemic racism that has caused and still causes harm to people of color throughout our country, including here in Vermont and in Brattleboro. We acknowledge that this harm is caused not only by overt acts of personal and systemic racism, but also more insidiously by unintentional impacts of unconscious bias. We acknowledge that the harm caused by systemic oppression, both intended and unintended, extends beyond people of color to include LGBTQIA+ people, people living with disabilities, psychiatrically labeled people, and other groups and individuals who carry historically marginalized identities. We acknowledge that, as documented in the Community Safety Review Team's report, people here in our community have experienced harm from the existing systems in our community. Finally, we acknowledge that as people in positions of authority today, we have an obligation to develop a more complete understanding of the harm that is being experienced and to take action to reduce and prevent such harm as we move forward from this time. Therefore, we commit ourselves to an ongoing process of reckoning with the harm caused by existing systems in Brattleboro and with our roles and actions within those systems. We further commit ourselves to approaching this work and future corrective actions with humility and reflection in collaboration with individuals and groups who have been negatively impacted by these systems. I'm not going to speak to specific recommendations, to the specific recommendations that come from the Community Safety Review Team's report, for the reason that I stated in the introduction to this topic. I am prepared if members of the public have questions or concerns about what we've presented in the written backup, or if the select board wishes to address any of the particular topics. We're prepared to participate in that conversation. But my advice to the board and to all of us collectively is to not go to those details in a way that could distract from the greater body of work and the necessity of getting started. And so in that, to speak to that, there is a part of the memorandum that sits on top of the implementation table, the spreadsheet that has the additional information brought forward from town staff about the 41 different items, that speaks to the pace and time frame of this work. And there's a dynamic tension between the urgent need to address some of these matters in ways that we know needs our attention, and the equal and competing need for us to move slowly enough to be thoughtful and fully engage with the community around what actions will be taken and what the impacts of those actions are intended to be and what those impacts of those actions actually are, so we can continue to adjust and correct as we need to going forward. And one of the things that I personally came to appreciate better in this past 6 weeks or so since it's been 6 or 7 weeks since the select board asked staff to do this piece of work. And during that time, with the work that we did and the folks with whom we interacted around this, both people who had been involved in the community safety review here in Brattleboro and with some other folks involved in this type of work elsewhere, what we came to better appreciate, and I personally came to better appreciate, is that this ambiguity, this tension between a sense of urgency and a need to be patient and persevere over a long period of time together with others in finding ways forward on the complicated ways in which we might change systems here in town, that actually is just a essential part of this work, and that we don't need to try to resolve that. And the more we give our attention to trying to resolve the urgency versus patience and perseverance, the more we are like sort of pulling ourselves out of the work to try to manage it more clinically. And so part of what has caused us to bring this forward in the manner that we have this evening is our sense that it's important to get started, and we have to have faith in ourselves and in each other and in the folks in the community that are going to be our collaborators to find our way forward. There will be some of this that will end up being relatively light lifting. Some of these things that we will find consensus on quite quickly, and we will be able to implement more readily. And there will be parts that will be much harder, much more complex, much more challenging in terms of making sure that what comes in place of what is actually can be effective and be better than what is. So there's just all different kinds of layers to this. Some parts of this are going to be clearer than others. Some parts of this are going to not be clear and are going to take a long time and are going to involve working through and resolving differences in sensibilities about what is best for the community. And what's important, I think, is that we not try to overly resolve those questions with the limited information that's available to us at this moment, but rather to embrace the necessity of moving forward with the work and trust ourselves and each other that as we go along, we will develop the appropriate pace and way forward on the different elements. I think that reasonably could cause folks to say that's too mushy or wishy-washy and not clear enough, and how are we going to hold you accountable? And so what we propose in terms of accountability is that there be regular intervals at which in these meetings, the select board receives updates and takes stock of where we are, and the community, which is going to be engaged with town staff and with each other in how we all work together on moving this body of work forward. At those public moments, that's where we as town staff will be held accountable. You as select board members will be held accountable. And collectively, those of us together, the community partners that are working on this will be held accountable as well for how are we doing? What progress have we made? What priorities are emerging as sort of the next big things we're working on? How are some of the other things coming along? Making sure we haven't lost track of things. And in places where we actually hit barriers to success because we can't find a better way forward, to be frank with each other about those things and resolve them if we can, or at least acknowledge them and sort them with together with the body of work of what is being accomplished and what is making the community safer and better. It's going to be messy. It's going to be long. It's going to be complicated. It's going to require lots of different people with lots of different areas of experience and expertise and priorities and individual priorities of individuals and groups. And we're going to need to work through that together and sorting that. I believe the accountability piece, rather than being preset by prioritizing these recommendations that have been brought to us as a body of work, not as separate sorted pieces, and to make sure that there is room for adjusting, for that recalibrating of that sense of urgency about certain elements of it, or reforming some of the details of exactly what we intend to accomplish, because we've learned some things along the way that make the path forward look different from what was originally articulated. All those things are going to be part of the process, and the way to keep ourselves accountable is to keep coming back into this public forum to be, to express what is happening and to work together to refine the path forward. In the table that we provided, we have 3 columns. I just want to say one little piece about the format of what we have provided, and again, not speak to the particular items within it. But the format has on the left-hand column exactly what was recommended in the words that were used by the Community Safety Review Team. In the center column, we have identified as best we can, and I think it's pretty solid, but I've had a few questions since Friday when we released this material that make it clear to me that, you know, there is a little fluidity to this, and there are some perspectives in the community about how some of these might have been labeled differently. But what the middle category is meant to indicate is the degree to which the town can unilaterally implement what is recommended. Because the way forward on those that are completely within the authority of the town that way forward will be simpler. I want to stress here that that doesn't mean that we'll act without further collaboration with the community. It means that as we collaborate with the community, it'll become incumbent upon the town to make a decision about moving forward, either as something is written or in some other manner to address that concern. But we will work together on many of these things. The fact that it says, yes, town unilaterally, doesn't mean the town will act in a vacuum without that same collaborative spirit that's going to be embodied in all the rest of this as well. But where we have identified in that town unilaterally with a question mark, center column, where we have identified no, we are calling out that those will be even more challenging areas of this work, because the town either doesn't have the authority to act unilaterally or not the full authority. We might have authority to act on parts of it, but where we're going to be dependent on others for other parts of it. And so we try in the third column, where we offer some notes, some descriptive information from town staff about these things. We try to, in both cases, on the ones that have a yes, the town can act unilaterally, or a no, the town cannot, to provide some context for that, some additional information that helps indicate to the community and to the select board, because we're going to be asking you, I'm going to be asking you here in about 30 seconds to please embrace this and launch it as a body of work. We're trying to give a little bit of context to where we see how these things might move forward, right? And particularly to speak to where actions of the town of Brattleboro can be taken on them once there has been sufficient work done around each of these different topics and together with people in the community. So with all that as introduction to the recommended action from your town staff for this evening is to direct us to get started with this in the manner that I've just described, in the manner that is set forth in the 2 pages of cover memorandum and the 4 pages of implementation information, so that we can engage with the community and get going and come back several months from now to do that first check-in around, you know, how are we doing? What have we accomplished during that time? What barriers have we encountered? You know, what additional information should be shared at that time that might affect how we collectively move forward, and do that recalibrating process that we expect will happen over and over again as we go on through the work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. A great summary of what was a large amount of work already. Board members, do you want to start? You want to kick this around a little bit? Daniel and Brandy, that was pretty sort of simultaneous. So fight it out.
I'll be short and sweet. I thank Peter and other town staff and the town attorney who are involved in producing this work. I thank the committee, the community safety review team that produced the report. And I'm ready to hand it over to professionals who can work in exactly the way that Peter described, that in some cases will be slow and, you know, plodding perhaps for some community members. But if we're trying to build new systems in some cases, which, you know, some of these recommendations are calling for, it's entirely appropriate that they will be, you know, long, thoughtful, collaborative processes that we don't yet fully know what they will look like. You know, I guess when community members have spoken with me about this body of work, meaning the report and its recommendations, often the questions are like about a concrete thing, like what will this look like? And my answer to them is, I do not know. And so as a person who is not charged with implementing these things and building these things, I think it's appropriate for me to give my blessing, to turn it over to people who will be entrusted with building and implementing. And I also trust the relationship we have with the town manager and also, other leaders and town staff, that accountability piece will be there. And in the months to come, we will have many more conversations about this where we get into some of the nuts and bolts of it, and we will have some decisions to make. And if I end up being reelected, I look forward to doing that work on the board over the next year. So I'm ready for a motion pretty soon, but I know that we should have some discussion about it, but that's how I'm feeling.
Thanks, Daniel. Brandy?
Thanks. I want to thank Peter for everything that you just said, from when you started to when you ended, from the acknowledgement of harm right through, your strong recommendation that we allow the process to move forward. So I actually, as much as I love hanging out with you guys, I'm not super interested in kicking it around a bit. I'm super interested in moving it forward and doing something great tonight. And so that's my intention.
Great. And just to clarify, the kicking around also probably helps people watching to know the mood of the board. So that, I think, sometimes is helpful for a viewer. I just wanted to clarify. Anyone else want to comment? Ian? Oh, you were slightly ahead of.
I was slightly ahead. Sure. Yeah, I think first off, Peter and everyone else that put the work into this was really a lot, and a lot of great work. I was really impressed with it. It's exactly basically what we asked you to do. And I really, I think it's very helpful. I think we're speaking a lot to moving this forward. I also really want to move this forward successfully, and I really believe that this is the right way to do this, so that we can actually get some concrete things out of these recommendations, move forward with the recommendations in a way that's positive for the whole community. And, for people on both sides of this who either feel like it's not fast enough or feel like it's too fast, this isn't the last time we're going to look at this. There's going to be oversight. There's going to be accountability. There's going to be ample opportunity for continued community involvement. And so this isn't the end of this at all. But I really believe that this is the right next step to continuing to do the work that this committee and this report is asking. And I'm looking forward to voting for it.
Great, thanks, Ian. Liz, or I can go next so that I'm not always getting the last word. It's up to you.
Well, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to go back to last June, where the board unanimously determined that we would take this dive. And, we're at a good inflection point, and I'm so appreciative of the work that Peter and the staff did to, identify the steps going forward. And as a matter of fact, according to the chart, some of this work has already begun. So I think everyone is happy to hear that, and also the understanding that comes with what can be done by us, what can be done with partners, the town. One of the hallmarks of our town government is collaboration. And, we collaborate with all the various committees and people who have interest and standing in this process. And I'm very optimistic that it's going to be the positive change that everybody wants. So again, I thank you, Peter, and I also look forward to voting affirmatively.
Thank you. I'm just going to say really quickly that I was skeptical of moving forward in this manner at first. I thought that a better way to do it, to be sort of out front with, what was good for our community, what was bad for our community, was to kind of, and Daniel, we started to go down this path, I think, when you made your list, and I really wanted to dive into that list and sort of, yeah, this is going to work, this is going to work, this is not going to work, this is not going to work. And that would have produced some action a little more quickly, but it would be much more dramatic. It would be not as honoring the work of the committee, I think, overall, because it's a body of work that needs to be recognized. There's still going to be decisions made in the future that people aren't going to agree with, most likely, and things that are going to people are going to be very happy about, I think. So to allow it to move forward as a body of work and not prioritize was, frankly, I think, a pretty smart move. And I was wrong in resisting it. So I appreciate the firm perseverance of Peter in this matter and the rest of the staff. It's the right way to go. So, Ian?
Tim, I just want to build on that for just a second because I think it's such a good point. And I just want to add that it also gives the board and the community an opportunity to be more informed about each of these individual things as the town moves forward with them, because there's so much to learn about some of these things. And one of the things I really appreciate about Peter's product here is that it also discusses looking at other communities and seeing what, there is other work being done. And I think that that's another ample place to look for guidance. And so I completely agree with you. And I think it's a really good point. I just wanted to second it.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me adding on to your adding, it also occurs to me that it kind of feels like it future-proofs the work a little bit, because we're setting in motion these 41 points to look at, and it's a roadmap for a future board. Were we to, very quickly cram in a bunch of actions this board, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, but to look at it as a body of work, I think it leaves a commitment that's more solid going forward. So we've all
going on.
What's that?
I said there's a lot of head nodding going on.
Yeah, there is. There's also a hand up, so I just want to honor that. And if it's all right, I'll recognize George Carville, who wants to speak to this subject. George?
There, I think I did the technology right.
Yeah.
Looks very good.
I've read the report, and I've read Peter's memo and his chart. I think that's an excellent framework for the town to move forward. And yes, we need more, police need more diversity. I need more diversity training, even though I've had some. But I find something missing from the report, something overarching. I think we put police in impossible situations. We put them in lose-lose situations and then criticize them because they don't win. In many ways, I think the Brattleboro Police Department is the hired muscle for other organizations, for the hospital, for mental health, for DCF. DCF, you talk about body cams. I'd like to see body cams on the DCF people. But my point is that while I think the town has work to do with the police and with all staff, I think that in this process, we also need to take a step back and decide whether or not our police resources are being used in the best way. And if the requirements and the requests for their services should really be handled by someone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Daniel.
I wanted to just prod one of my colleagues on the board. Her name is Brandy Starr. I wondered if you would be interested in making this motion.
I would be beyond interested in making this motion. I'd be thrilled. But first I should pull it up. So
Yes.
I'm just nodding along at you. Okay. If we're ready, I'll make that motion. I have to click off my camera to do it. So I wanted to make sure to check in one more time because I won't be able to see you.
Thank you. Please.
I move to authorize town staff to move forward on implementation of recommendations set forth in the Community Safety Review Team's report dated December 31st, 2020, in the manner described in the memorandum dated February 25th, 2021 from Town Manager Elwell and in the implementation table that was attached to that memorandum.
Thank you, Brandy. Brandy has made a motion to authorize town staff to move forward on implementation of recommendations set forth in the Community Safety Review Team's report dated December 31st, 2020, in the manner described in the memorandum dated February 25th, 2021, from Town Manager Elwell and in the implementation table that was attached to that memorandum. Board members, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye if you don't mind.
Aye.
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 That is 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and all staff and community members involved.
Whew.
Big one. So, deep breath. We have our next unfinished business is concerning Cow Power and the recommendation from the Energy Committee. And Peter, remind me, were you gonna tee this up a little bit for us?
So Stephen Dotson is in the meeting and will summarize the materials that he's brought forward. You'll recall that there was a pretty extensive discussion of this at the meeting 2 weeks ago, at the end of which the select board asked several questions. And so Stephen, together with other town staff, but primarily Stephen out on the point of this, has followed up on those things, prepared the written backup for tonight's meeting, and we'll summarize that for you now to hopefully help you move forward towards action on this.
Thank you, Stephen, and welcome.
Thank you. So you should have received both a Word document and a spreadsheet. And in that, I tried to respond to the specific request you had to distinguish different aspects of town electricity use between lighting and I combined metering with lighting because there was so little of it that it was negligible. So there are 3 categories now to consider this new Cow Power proposal, in a sense, and the same 2 levels of commitment, either carbon neutral or 100% renewable, as well as carbon neutral for the town's electricity, broken out by these 3 segments. The third being all the utility and parks and rec structures, which are not occupied by people necessarily, but really constitute a significant portion of our consumption. So I tried to make it as clear as possible and provide what answers I could to the questions you offered. It was 2 weeks ago that we discussed this, and I've been in contact with Green Mountain Power around some of the questions specific to impact and whether or not our investment would equate to further support for local farms. What I was able to determine is that there is likely 1 farm in Windham County in Westminster that has methane digesters that are a part of this program, but I can't confirm that with GMP yet. I've been calling and emailing and haven't yet received confirmation. So I see that through a community energy dashboard. It's a different thing that the Farm to Plate network provides. for farms. And I can tell they have a digester. I can't tell if it is part of GMP's program. So I believe it's a meaningful investment still. And you saw the metrics in terms of how many farms were being supported as of 2019, I think. And if I can answer any questions on the data, I'd be glad to. Otherwise, I think Oscar Heller is here from the Energy Committee specific to the proposal, and Django Grace as well. So that's what I've got.
Thank you, Stephen. I always appreciate color charts.
Yeah,
I
the
love
color
seeing-
coding helps me too. So glad it works for you.
Board, would you, what's your preference? I'd like to just go ahead. Should we take any public comment first, or should we just start chiming in on things? What would you like?
What about Oscar?
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to ask. Do you want to bring in the Energy Committee itself? Okay.
Do you have any more questions for me, just to say?
Yeah, let's see if, do we have specific questions for Stephen first?
Okay.
Welcome, Oscar. Hello.
Hey.
Whoa.
And Daniel, did I see that hand? Okay.
I was waving at Oscar,
Oh.
but I mean, thank you, Stephen, for this work. It's appreciated. I don't have any specific questions. I think you answered all the questions that we had last time very well. So, yeah. And hello, Oscar.
Hey.
Wow. I want to be where you are.
Yeah.
I got a feeling he's not really there.
I think Oscar's a cat.
Hmm?
It's
Hi, Django.
it's
Django
Tiffany
is,
Brook, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
My gosh.
What?
I don't have a presentation or anything really beyond what we talked about last time. I'm happy to answer any questions or give any, if you want the committee's opinion on something, I'm happy to try to summarize, but I don't have anything in particular.
great.
Yeah, same. I didn't prepare anything at all.
That's fine. Actually, I prepared very little because we did a lot of discussing this last time. For anybody tuning in who was expecting sort of a full-on getting into all of the nuances, there's a little bit of disagreements going on with the board, but we're going to get somewhere tonight. Does anybody want to? Okay, Daniel and then Ian.
Sure. I'll just keep it simple. I mean, last time when we discussed this, I was in favor of us investing in this renewable energy source to the extent of the Energy Committee's recommendation. I appreciate Stephen's work and whomever else was involved in that work. It doesn't change my mind on that. I feel like we should continue to make this bold investment in renewable energy. And so that is how I intend to vote when we get to that place.
Thanks, Daniel. Ian?
Yeah, I am also in favor of moving forward with a recommendation from the Energy Committee for the full 37%. And as I understand it from last meeting's discussion, there were members of the board who believed that the buildings were maybe more of the will of the people based on 2 votes in 2018. And I guess I'm curious to try to move this forward in an expedited way, looking at the material provided, that the buildings at the 37% would be $30,000, and the full amount at the 37% would be the 40. I can get the exact number up. Oscar, do you have the number?
Yeah, 42,885.
42,885. So I guess I'm curious to those board members if that difference to have the town's electricity consumption be 100% carbon neutral and renewable, if that difference is worth it, or if we're kind of back on still in the paradigm that we were at last week.
Oh, I think I misunderstood. Could you repeat that last question? Because my brain went off somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just curious if we're still sort of talking buildings or not buildings, and additional stuff or not, based on what the backup material, because I think it will just move the that's kind of where I saw us landing last week. So I'm just sort of curious, based on the numbers that we've got now.
There was a couple of different points of disagreement last time. I'll speak for myself. I think you're speaking a little bit to the bit of an expansion from the votes, because the votes had to do with town buildings. I think the actual vote was for new and renovated town buildings, and then the Kurt Dimes BCS proposal for a standing vote at town meeting was town buildings in the resolution or the motion. I think the expansion into all town electricity kind of makes sense. So even though I'm still on the side of we should do something else,
okay,
I think the expansion kind of makes sense and is along with the spirit of the votes. So I don't think I'm willing to argue that anymore. That was, sort of a letter of the law thing that was bugging me, and I thought should be acknowledged, that there's been somewhere along the way an expansion from town buildings or renovated and new town buildings into all electricity that the town uses. And that's a significant expansion when we look at the numbers, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think, yes.
So I personally, I'm going to let that part of it go.
Okay.
Just to clear that up, yeah. And Brandy, sorry, Brandy's distracted by a cute dog. Sorry, I was going to invite you to say something because you weren't at the last meeting, and we definitely wanted your input.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, what I read and what I saw, what I heard when I watched the meeting back seemed very detailed to me and self-explanatory, and I was definitely in favor of it from here, watching it back and just reading about it. And I don't have a lot of questions. We all have our fields of really deep knowledge, and energy is not mine, but I like Stephen. I trust Stephen. I trust our energy committee. I trust them to make sound recommendations, and I'm in favor. Thank you for that. And
sure.
I had to give a lot of extra kisses, because usually we have snuggle time between 6:30 and 7:30 where we jump in bed with mama and watch movies, and we aren't doing that on select board nights. And I'm seeing a definite slip back of clingy and naughty behavior because of it. Cute behavior, but yeah.
It's so weird sometimes trying to be focused when you're doing this from home, Liz?
Thank you, Tim. I wanted to address a couple of things, a couple of holdovers from the last meeting. First, I'd like to address a kind of procedural issue. I worked on the town plan as a member of the Planning Commission for many years, for 8 years. And when I joined the board, the work on the town plan was already commenced. And we worked on it, for several years, and it's a complex thing. And we brought this fabulous work product to the select board. And some major tenets of that plan, the select board just said no. And I was quite taken aback, but I realized that this is how town government works, and that it was not dismissing the work of the planning board, but it was more of a matter of our focus on this single discipline gets reviewed by the select board, which might have a broader view and might have fiscal responsibilities. And so with that in mind, I want to again reiterate that, I respect the work that the sustainability coordinator and the energy committee has prepared. And, of course, that work was continuing, from work that Kurt did to work that town staff did, and then handed over to the energy committee and so forth. So I appreciate all of that. But I have a couple of points that I want to bring up. First, I want to bring up the fact that a municipality contributing to cow power is unprecedented. And what that means is that cow power was not set up that way. And I think that begs the question of why. And I don't think it's really appropriate for the taxpayers of Brattleboro to be investing in cow power to such a large degree. And I think that one of the things that the Energy Committee brought up was that they want Brattleboro to be in the position of saying to town residents and businesses, we invested in cow power and we want you to as well. And I think that can be done at the 6% level. And then we will still be the only municipality to have invested in cow power. And we will still be the one and only Brattleboro. Couple of other points that are of interest to me was that, there was a lot of talk about how it would require detailed research and effort to identify Brattleboro's level of carbon sequestration. And I think that we can pretty well estimate, a back of the envelope calculation that if 60% of the land area in Brattleboro is treed, which the Planning Commission has told me, and a typical hardwood tree can absorb as much as 48 pounds of carbon dioxide per year, then Brattleboro can easily say that there's a significant amount of carbon sequestration within our town. And I think that, the board can continue to get a rough estimate of that sequestration number without a whole big study. But ultimately, I think that the taxpayers of Brattleboro should not have to pay a surcharge of 8 or 9% on our electric bill, which is $500,000. It's $495,000 we are paying to Green Mountain Power. And on top of that, we're asking to pay another $42,000. I think that's, it's not monopoly money. And it's up to the select board to decide. The Energy Committee has given us options. And I think that the more modest sum makes the point that the Energy Committee is trying to make nicely. But what I would like to hear more about from the Energy Committee is efforts for energy efficiency and reducing our electric use rather than paying a premium on the electricity use that we use. And so I would suggest that we have the 6% option, which is a premium of $6,954.48 to Cow Power. And then to start a fund of $30,000 of Brattleboro money to fund energy efficiency purchases that will lead to real energy savings and improvements. And so, if we set up this fund for green purchases, we would do something different than, what we're doing now with Cow Power would be a premium on the electricity usage as it stands now. But it's not an energy efficiency measure. It's merely, a carbon neutral measure. So I would like my fellow board members to think about kind of splitting this baby to make the 6% recommended donation to Cow Power, but also to instead set up a fund for energy efficiency with the remaining $30,000. And I could make a motion if people were looking for that.
I think, well, first of all, I'd like to take a couple of hands, but, oh, Ian? Is it?
Can I respond to Liz just for one thing?
Oh, yeah.
Liz, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to let that sit because I do not appreciate the insinuation that anyone on this board is characterizing taxpayer money like monopoly money. And I think that we all are very carefully weighing the positives and negatives of all of the decisions that we make when we spend taxpayer money. And I don't know whether that was what you were trying to say there, but I can't let that sit because I don't appreciate that characterization.
Well, Ian, that was not a specific characterization of the select board, the energy committee, any member of town staff. It was just hyperbole regarding the fact that, just to emphasize the fact that this is not merely numbers on paper. And I think everyone understands that. And certainly I understand that you do, and I meant no disrespect.
I thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Thanks to you both. I'm gonna let's invite Django and Oscar, who both have hands up. Apologies to public, but I just want to make sure that the Energy Committee who brought this to us has a chance to weigh in, and then I'll circle back to the two people who have their hands up from the public. Django and Oscar.
Django, you want to go?
Yeah. I'd just like to say, I think that there's a line between Oscar, why don't you go first? I need to collect my ideas real quick.
Sure. So, I think this proposal is not going to change the world or change huge things for Brattleboro. And I also feel like I've heard positions expressed, and I sort of have an idea of where people are leaning. So I could just, keep my mouth shut. But in the interests of good dialogue about something that I think is really important and that we should talk about, I want to respond to some of the points that Liz made. I won't get into the whole, where this idea comes from. I completely understand, believe me, that the select board's job is to look at what they're given and, make decisions about it. And it's not just rubber stamping everything that comes across, and that scrutinizing something that comes from a committee or town staff or a member of the public or whatever is not disrespectful. It's what you're supposed to be doing. So I completely get that. And I haven't taken any of this process as disrespect of the committee, or you should just be doing, implementing what we give you or something like that. Not at all. So I'm totally on board with that. I feel like too much is being made of the fact that Cow Power doesn't have another municipality subscribe to it. So in that sense, yes, it may be unprecedented, but the idea of a town buying 100% renewable electricity is not at all unprecedented. I just want to make sure that this is not being characterized as some weird experiment or something strange or something that Brattleboro would be the first to do. Cow Power doesn't exist outside of Green Mountain Power, and it's a relatively under-publicized program and undersubscribed. But it is very common in 2021 for towns to pay a premium for 100% renewable electricity in different forms. The idea of whether or not it's appropriate for taxpayers to be investing in this, I think this is just a fundamental disagreement that I have on this issue with plenty of people, I'm sure. But there is nothing, it's not an experiment, it's not an investment in a program, it's not, we are paying for something and we're getting it, right? We're paying for renewable electricity at the costs, the market rate for this particular form of renewable electricity, and we're getting it. So that would be us as consumers in the energy marketplace choosing to spend on this type of electricity that I would argue is more valuable in these external ways that don't show up on a balance sheet, at least not directly. But the reason people have been pushing for this, the reason RTM wants this or wanted this in that resolution, et cetera, is because people think that the people who want it think that 4 cents a kilowatt hour is worth the benefit of having that electricity be renewable instead of not. So I think, and I just, reducing everything to the financial side of things, which is very important, is one of the reasons that everyone is in this position to begin with, right? Why did we use coal and oil for so long and still do and find it so hard to switch off them? Because it's cheaper, because it's easier. So at a certain point on something that is a moral issue to some degree, I believe, we just have to say we're willing to eat the cost because we think it's worth it. And if we don't think it's worth it as a community, then we shouldn't do it. But that's a choice. It's, do we want to pay for this or not? Not, is it, irresponsible to pay this? It's just about our preferences as a community and our values as a community. And then I don't want to go on. I think the carbon sequestration thing, back the envelope thing, I think in some ways it's a really dangerous conversation to have at any level other than extreme detail and focus, because it can be really easy to, it's really technical, and it could be bad to overcount and feel better about things than we should. I just think it's a technical process. I'm happy to talk about it more some other time. God knows Stephen's heard me talk about it enough and argue about it. So yeah, I hope this passes. It's not going to change the world, but I wanted to offer some counterpoints there. So thank you.
Yeah, if I could real quick, basically Oscar just summarized a lot of the technical points. And I just wanted to say, I think that Elizabeth's idea of establishing a fund is a very, very good idea. I don't think that as part of the Cow Power discussion, this should be a part of it. I would be totally behind a separate motion that Liz could make to establish a fund with taxpayer money toward green purchasing, because I think that's a very, very good idea as we move forward into the future. Yeah, and I think that to kind of generalize the land that Brattleboro is on as part of our carbon sequestration is not a very it's not a very responsible calculation, because like let's say when a town like New York calculates how much carbon they emit, they don't put in how much Central Park takes out of the air. So like, I think to speak for the trees as kind of things that we are using is, I don't think that's a good way to look at how we're creating energy or whatever. Yeah, we could go on for hours with this discussion. Tim's shaking his head. So we
No,
can't.
let's not.
But let's not. No, I don't want to. But yeah, we did last time. So I think, yeah, regardless of what happens, there will be a decision made, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Let me just, oh, Daniel, did you want to say
Oh,
something?
no.
Oh, sorry. Let me just jump in because I haven't said anything yet. And then we'll take our public comments, questions. My position on this really, I mean, it hasn't changed. And I'll just give you the top line again. Okay. 100% renewable is, I mean, renewable is a pretty, and Oscar, just nod if you think I'm saying the right thing. Renewable is kind of, depends on who you ask. Renewable has a lot of definitions from a lot of different people. There's arguments within what is renewable and what is not. Cow power is not really auditable by the taxpayers of Brattleboro. And I'm constantly seeking direct, auditable actions that help Brattleboro actually conserve energy or restrict the emissions that we put out, that we could point to and say, this is what we used this money for. And I don't think the cow power meets that criteria to the degree that I'm comfortable with the 37% commitment. I think the charts, seeing the charts was really helpful. And, you know, just on a, it's pretty cool to see the data on the kind of electricity the town uses. And, you know, just saying things like Plenty Park, with the usage going way up in December and January when the tree is lit, you know, you can tell it's a real piece of data, all of these points. But it brings to mind to me that we do spend a lot on electricity. And I think Daniel would agree with me that not spending that electricity is better than paying what feels to me still as, you know, indulgences to going forward. And again, this stuff is, I mean, we're talking about something that's going to be added to the taxpayer bills, and we're going to support cow power. And I want to say 100% that I think the program's pretty cool and it's worth supporting. And it is supporting renewable energy. I'm not wanting to throw shade on that idea at all, but what I'm advocating for is something that we can spend taxpayer money on that is extra, that will actually produce things that will reduce our either consumption or carbon emissions. I want to use as an example, and Peter can back me up. Oh, he disappeared, but that's okay. If I get this wrong, but by my recollection, when we talked about the police station, does everybody recall that? It wasn't that long ago. The police station was a situation where a lot of people were saying, hey, would you be able to throw in a wood boiler, you know, a pellet boiler? You recall some of this? We ended up converting it, I think, from oil to natural gas. So that choice was made because of money and because of the political will involved at the time. And frankly, it's a little better, I think, but not much, right? Daniel, I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I think it's a little bit less bad to be having natural gas or propane, whichever it is, at the police station, but it's not what we really wanted. What if we had a fund that had built up over a few years and we could point to and say, let's tap into this and instead, and really let's go with wood, if that's what everybody wants, or if that's the current technology that we think is the best way to go to reduce usage or emissions, like I said. So that's why I want this taxpayer money. And I think that we're talking about something that we're committing to now. If we commit to the 37,000, or sorry, the 42,000 increase, we're talking about this year after year, right, board members? I mean, it's gonna keep going unless a board repeals it, as far as I understand. So what I'm advocating for, and what Liz, sounds like Liz supports too, is taking the difference or some sort of amount, $30,000, and investing in a fund where we could find those projects going forward that actually reduce our usage of electricity, our usage of fossil fuels, converting fossil fuels. It could even be windows and buildings that need it, wherever we have control, but the taxpayers can see, well, this is a real thing. And not only stopping some emissions maybe, but it's reducing, maybe it's chipping away at that $500,000 that we spend on electricity. Feels more real to me. And that's why I think going for the cow power to support cow power, I think is fine. But the 6% I think is fine. We'd still be able to say, put the feather in our cap to say, we have made a commitment to carbon neutrality in Brattleboro. And also here we have a yearly contribution to a fund to spend it on real measures that will reduce our footprint. That's my pitch. Daniel.
I don't hate it. You know, I remember when I first started getting interested in municipal stuff, a lot of it was around energy and energy efficiency. And there had been a municipal energy audit conducted in the not too distant past. And there were a number of recommendations in it. And it was expensive, right? Like most of the recommendations that came out of that were big projects. And the reason why, and Peter, correct me if you feel I misrepresent here, but I think I got it. You know, the reason why a lot of that stuff didn't happen is partly to do with timing. You know, there could have been a project that would have tied the municipal center's heat in and the library's heat in. But we were also in this position where we weren't sure about the municipal center's future, and we're still, you know, a little unsure. And so there was a stopgap purchase of a gently used heating system to tide things over. And that made fiscal sense. And it was also like, you know, just a quirk of timing. The only thing I, you know, feel about this potential for like a clean energy fund, or, you know, a green purchasing fund, as Django kind of described it, is that 30 grand, you know, doesn't go too far. And that if we, you know, I know it's not nothing, I get that. But if we were to be serious about that idea, maybe it's worth just taking a little bit more time to kind of think about, because, you know, I recognize that the decisions we need to make about things like heating systems and energy efficiency projects are things that kind of come up at certain moments. And if you've got a little fund of money that helps kind of subsidize moving in this direction instead of this direction, that's not a bad idea. You know, the water treatment plant is going to be super energy efficient. It's going to use heat pumps for heating, right? So that's electricity. We'll actually make our electricity bill larger, probably, right? I mean, I don't know, that's a side point. And that's like, you know, that's a thing that happens in the moment with a capital project and capital investment. If there was a little fund to contribute to moving towards energy efficiency, you know, away from fossil fuels, I would I would support that. I just like to kind of have a bit more time to think about it. I didn't know this proposal would come up today.
You know, I just wanted to say it doesn't have to be a little fund either, in my mind.
Good.
Well, here's the thing. If it's going to be spent on projects that have to be done anyway, it feels like the taxpayers would be more in favor for that forward investment, that, I don't know, not pay it forward, but that banking of tax money. We've talked about it in many other ways when we talk about our roads and our capital investments. But that banking for green choices in the future is something that I think would have even more support throughout our community. But I would like to, I think we have to take some hands. Liz?
I just wanted to mention that, you know, it is an option to go with the 6% now and then flesh out this idea, if Daniel wants more time to flesh it out, about the Green Energy Fund.
Absolutely. So I'm, Django, I see your hand. I also see Stevens, but what? You're pointing.
He's muted, I think.
Yeah.
I understand. I just was
Okay.
trying to get to our public who's.
I think that's what he wants.
Yeah, I was trying
Oh.
to point to the public because on my screen I'm
Okay.
pointing toward them.
Yeah.
but I
Right,
don't-
it's the
I
opposite.
realize
on
you
mine,
guys
so
probably
I
have a
was-
different
no
screen
wonder who-
layout, so that's probably pretty stupid. All right, just let them.
Hollywood Squares is different for everyone, I think. Let's go to the public's hands up. Kurt Dimes has been very patient, and he is top of the stack, as we say. Hello.
Hello, everyone. I wish, and I really think I should be empaneled for this discussion because the resolution which brought about the involvement of the assistant town manager who referred it to the Energy Committee, that resolution came from my organization and was approved by RTM in 2018. So the slow pace here, taking 3 years to come to a vote, it belies the emergency. It was a small, actionable climate emergency resolution that brought about this debate, and the record should show that. And because of that, it's very distressing that it's taking 3 years. And at this point, to introduce complicating counter proposals is wrong and shows a great disrespect to the RTM. If something's non-binding, that doesn't mean you ignore it. That means maybe you round off the corners. That means maybe you don't take the word building too literally, but it doesn't mean you forget about that, the resolution. It was a vote of RTM in 2018, and Peter promised it would be addressed through the Energy Committee. So very distressing that you guys are taking so long and coming up with counter proposals and distractions. And because my organization proposed it and it was endorsed by 350, I thought I should be on the panel to talk about it because we've been dealing with it first since 2010. BCS researched in 2010. Anyway, it was intended to be a simple thing that explained, that showed the people's willingness to spend for climate rescue. And we researched it and we talked to 100-some people, not just my friends, but it was, we found there was great support for it. And I reminded the board on more than one occasion that it could have been implemented with one phone call. It could have had full implementation with one phone call starting in 2018, while town staff researched the other possibilities, and that didn't happen. So I'm thinking now, it seems like there's been too much delay, too much penny pinching. If you see a child drowning, you don't say, oh, I want to use the cheaper rope or the cheaper floaty. You take action. And if you don't, you're denying the emergency. And that's what the board has been doing for all these years. For 3 years, it's been denying this emergency. So I want to say in closing, justice delayed is justice denied. Although there are individual people in our town government, most of you, who will say they are not climate deniers, collectively, systemically, you're getting, this is denial. It's collectively, you're denying the emergency. And if you deny the emergency, you're denying the climate crisis. Please, let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Kurt. Daniel has his good hand up.
Yeah, I can't raise the other one. I just want to ask Kurt a question.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
Kurt, stay with us.
I don't know why, and then he can still hear me, right? Even though we can't see him. I'm just saying that for the public, I guess, so that they don't think that I'm just speaking into the void.
Yes, sir.
If this was such a critical thing to be passed, and you'd been working on it since 2010, why bring it up as a piece of any other business for a non-binding vote? Why not get it on a ballot? Why not get it in the named articles? Why not have numbers fleshed out so that the people of the town could say, we're buying into this and I know how much it's going to cost us and we still want to do it? I don't understand why, you know, you've sort of wanted to put yourself in the front of this issue. And so here you are. I don't know why, if this is so important, it wasn't done in a way to make it have more standing.
You don't understand, Dan. It has standing as a vote of RTM. It's non-binding. That doesn't mean you disrespect it. I just said that. It's a vote of RTM. Non-binding doesn't mean you don't care about it. It doesn't mean non-binding doesn't mean it's unimportant. It means that it hasn't been warned. That's what it means. It hasn't been warned.
Well,
and the select board would be empowered to change and tweak it, you know, to ignore the technical definition of a building.
But the board is not.
I mean, I brought it to a vote 3 times. I got an endorsement from the state chapter of your organization. Did a lot of work. I mean, you can't say I don't think it was important. We worked on it since 2010. We did surveys, we did research. I negotiated with GMP. I knew a lot of the things that have been discussed and investigated and redundantly by the committee. So don't say, oh, it was just a non-binding vote of RTM. That's your RTM, dude. You should have more respect for it.
I'm just saying that if this is something that meant so much, there are other avenues to make this binding, to make it something that the board 3 years ago, 2 years ago, was just going to be required to move forward with. And I care deeply about this topic, as well, you know, and I'm trying to do the right thing. And everyone else who's on this board is trying to do the right thing. And all of the people who've been involved in this process have been trying to do the right thing. And when you characterize us as dragging our feet and denialists, that is unhelpful. It does not serve your cause. And, you know, here we are.
I'm sorry that to have to use those coarse words, but collectively, it has been denial. Collectively, you have dragged your feet. I mean, should I read the letter that I got from town staff?
No, we don't need.
Yeah.
We don't need more past history stuff. Thank you, Kurt. I just need to say that, you know, this is before us because we wanted to wait. This entire board wanted to wait actually until we had Stephen Dotson to do research for us, to have the Energy Committee to do research for us. The Energy Committee brought this to us. Now, I understand that Kurt Dimes has been key in getting this seed to grow, so to speak. He has planted a seed and it has grown. And along the way, by the way, I don't hear any recognition that it has expanded to be even more powerful in a way, because we're not talking about buildings anymore. And Kurt's standing voice vote talked about buildings, literally just buildings. We're now talking about all the electricity usage for the town. And as I said earlier, that's more appropriate. That's catching the will of the voters and making it more reasonable, in my opinion, making it bigger. It's grown since that seed has been planted. So you don't have standing here, so to speak, as you put it, because this is something that has come from our newly hired sustainability coordinator. It has come from our committee, which has worked hard on it. And it was not recognized that it would be that powerful coming from one person. It would be more powerful coming from a committee of people who have worked on it and a professional who was hired to work on such things for us. So I just wanted to make those points, that I understand that it could be frustrating if you planted the seed and then the tree is much bigger, but that's not really how it went down. We had no obligation to have Kurt Dimes seated at this table, so to speak. And I'd really like to move forward with the actual argument, which is reasonable. We all have, if there's two sides, I don't know if there's more than two sides, that'll be too complicated for me to put my brain around, but there's two sides and there's both reasonable arguments of what we should do with taxpayer money in this situation. So Michael Bosworth, if you don't mind, board, I'm going to move through the people with their hands up.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Muted, Michael.
And you just need to unmute. There we go.
Okay, Michael Bosworth, District 1. Just a couple of notes. I certainly am in favor of a select board voting tonight $42,000 approximately to energy needs. The global climate change is such a huge problem. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's a substantial amount of money. I think it will help. This sort of late proposal from Elizabeth and Tim, I'll let the five of you, wrestle with that. Interesting proposal. I just want to say a couple things about cow power. I think it would be easier if they say there were two dairy farms within the town of Brattleboro that had digesters, so we knew it would be helping them out directly. That's not the case as far as we know. I'm almost certain that the one in Westminster is a cow power farm. I'm a Green Mountain Power customer. I do read their sometimes the slips they put in their bills, or they used to, talking about their projects. So I do remember the one in Westminster. And the other thing about cow power, that it's attractive because it not only generates the renewable energy, but it takes what would be more methane, less methane being put into the atmosphere. So that's a sort of two benefits, so it makes it attractive to me, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Next, we're going to take Abigail. Welcome.
Hi, my lighting is a little challenging. But, yeah, this is a topic close to my heart. I'm Abigail Manukin, by the way.
You're a little low on my end. I'm not sure if everybody else, if you could just get a little closer to your.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'm a town meeting rep, and I also work with 350 Vermont, which is the state organization that's affiliated with the global grassroots climate justice group called 350.org. And I support this proposal. I also think it's not the end game, but it's an important step. What 350 believes in a few different things, including divesting from fossil fuels, not no more keeping it in the ground, so no more new fossil fuel projects, as well as a just transition to 100% clean, renewable energy. And I think an important question for us to ask, a lot of people maybe asking like, what can Brattleboro do? Brattleboro is so small, global climate change, global climate crisis, climate catastrophes are like so much bigger than us, we can't do anything. And bringing it back and thinking about what we can actually do locally, and also who's paying and what are we paying for, and having access to cheap energy is means that someone else is paying a lot of that. And so when our energy sources are not coming from here and they're cheap, there are other people on the other side of that who are really, really suffering. And we need to remember that and can't just make our choices because it's the cheapest for us. 350 is a climate justice organization, and the justice part of that is that climate change affects all of us, and it does not affect all of us equally. There are disproportionate impacts, and we need to remember that, and that's really important in this case as well. And one of the groups that's most impacted in our community is actually the youth that Django is representing as our energy committee member, and how youth are going to be paying for the climate crisis way more than people who are older now. And so we need to think about that today. And the money that we're investing today is going to mean that that's going to take away from the exorbitant costs that we are going to have to face with this issue later. And so this is a real investment in today, in our youth, in this movement, in this moment. And I strongly support it. And I'm so grateful, especially to Django, for bringing that youth voice to the town, and standing up to some pretty intense pushback that I'm really impressed. And I hope you will all listen to him and listen to the Energy Committee and listen to Stephen and vote yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. So, board members, I did it again and kind of blew past our break because I was enjoying the conversation so much. I would like to take a break. I mean, we need to do that occasionally. Is it okay to just take this back up, move it forward one way or another after our break?
Yeah.
Okay. I just have 8:09 on my clock, so let's say 8:20. Is that good?
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody. Hang on. All right. Welcome back. Where were we? Oh, wait. Let's make sure Brandy is with us. Yeah. Okay. We were sort of at a breaking point, I think. We have a few more hands up. Kurt has already spoken to this a couple times. Well, once was in a response. So what's the board's preference? Oh,
take new folks.
Anyway. Ian, did you have a comment?
I was going to say, maybe we should let people who haven't spoken yet speak first.
Thank you. Jeannie is up next. Welcome. And Jeannie, if you don't see the request from Patrick, maybe I can give it a try myself.
Okay. I think, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Hi, everybody. So I'm a resident of Brattleboro just since 2012. I have a couple of observations and also a question. I'll start with my observations. I think that I can understand Mr. Dime's frustration. He's been working on this passionately for quite some time, it seems, and the personal investment that he's made, it seems like he could have thrown the 42,000 in himself at this point, and made it work. I guess I don't see up against 500,000 for the utility budget, why 42,000 is such a huge deal. That's my first thought. Also, I'm having a hard time understanding why we would start a fund for something when the cow power is available as something that seems relatively inexpensive up against some other renewable energy projects. If somebody could just speak to that a little bit, that why the money is seems so out of range.
Well, obviously, we all have our own perspectives. But Jeannie, I would say that it's more about the argument about where the effort towards the reduction or the energy use should go. And there's a disagreement on the value to spending the money on a program which is not completely, but it sounds like largely going outside of Brattleboro. And it sounds like Liz and I are advocating for something that's a little different. We're not saying that the cow power should not be done. We're advocating for less of a commitment in favor of things that would be spent on actual town improvements to reduce usage and carbon emissions. So it's just sort of a philosophical debate at this point. Nobody's arguing that it's a huge amount of money, but I think Liz and I are arguing that it's a huge enough amount of money that we should be careful how we spend it. And anyone else is welcome to chime in. Okay, how about George Cargill?
Okay. There we go.
You are.
Thank you. I'm co-chairman of the Social and Environmental Action Committee at All Souls Church. And our committee has been studying climate change and climate problems now for about 2 years. I say that not because what I'm about to say is endorsed by the committee, but just to say that we've been looking at this issue, closely. It would seem to me that this amount of money is a worthwhile expenditure. I think it would be interesting to look at how well it worked a year from now. But beyond that, it's the right thing to do. And we don't worry or be concerned about the taxes about filling our roads. We have to maintain our roads, okay? We've got to plow the streets. There are things that a municipality must do. And I'm suggesting that in this day and age, facing the climate crisis that we face, these are things that a municipality has to do. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Well, Ian, do you want to throw something out there before I go to Gary?
Yeah, can I ask a quick question just because something that George brought up that sort of relates directly to it, just quickly. I'm curious if the question on looking at this a year from now, is this something that could be like, could it be something like its own line item so that each year it has an opportunity to be discussed so that we continue, because it's not something that we need to commit to for more than just the next year, as I understand it. So could it be understood in a way in the budget so that each year Brattleboro can make this commitment next year to this fund?
Was that directed at Peter?
I think so.
Okay.
Sure. I wasn't
Make sure who was being interrogated.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. It's to Peter.
Yes. The material answer to your question is yes. The specific mechanics of it might be a little tricky to show as its own line item because of how the electric bills show up in so many different places. But what we could at the very least do is report to you during the budget process each year about this item so that you can make a new decision about it for the next year. And there may be a way to make it easier than that by just actually creating a line item, but we'd have to just look into that.
If I can just follow up, Tim.
Sure.
I think given the point that we're paying a premium for something, and we're not getting any more electricity or anything like that, it's, I could very much understand putting this in a position where it would be something that, the board decided each year and it was discussed in public, and that it wasn't just folded into the electric bill that we pay without any discussion from year to year, given that it's just a yearly expense.
Is that accurate, Peter? Or are you saying it's a little complicated because it gets paid through so many accounts?
Yeah, what I'm saying is the specific question that Ian asked was, can it have its own line item? And my answer to that is a little iffy because it depends on the ability to segregate this in the payment of our energy bills or electric bills. But I'm not concerned about that because materially I can say on behalf of town staff, yes, we can make sure that this cost is isolated in a way, even if it doesn't have its own line item in the budget, we can isolate it for you in a way that the select board during each annual budget cycle can look at this question and decide whether to continue.
Yeah. And I would imagine that it doesn't have to be even like to the penny or anything, it's just a reminder.
Yeah.
When we go through the budget process. Okay.
Like, are we willing to make this commitment again to doing it this way? Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel?
Yeah, I just want to kind of add on to that. Like when George asked his question, like, can we look at it next year? I was like, well, George, all it's going to be is we spent 42 grand on this thing. But I'm forgetting that actually the 42 grand is a function of a percentage, right? So the decision is, do we want to spend 37% of our electric costs on this program called Cow Power, which does X, Y, Z? And so over time, that number will change, the dollar figure will change. And if we move in the direction that I think we should move in, we will move towards more electrification, greater efficiency. So there'll probably be some trade-offs there. But we're not gonna start to see smaller electric bills in a noticeable. I'm overstepping my knowledge. This is veering into conjecture, but I think you get my point. I'm still open to Liz's suggestion. I think 30,000 is too small. I would entertain a number more like 70.
But if it's every year,
right,
it adds up.
Yep.
Well, that was interesting. I love being surprised. If it's okay with the board, before anything else happens, I'm going to take Gary's hand. Gary, welcome.
How you doing?
Doing well.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm back. So I was just listening, basically. Yeah. So I was chiming in, Gary Stroud, District 2 rep, about what you were saying, because I'm sort of a graph guy too, Tim. So I got my electric bill.
Yeah, I don't like those.
Yeah, I've seen Daniel several times. And thank you again, sir, for the help. But looking at, the breakdown, the itemization on here, every time I turn on, this is something new I have never seen. Past storm and power fixed charge. Okay, $1.18. Emerald ash borer charge, 18 cents. This is every month. That adds up. And as a taxpayer, as we can see, and a consumer, and a father that's on a fixed income, I would like to think this project would probably help out in a way that will not only subsidize, but also help decrease. Because last night, I don't know if you guys were aware of the little windstorm we had. And every single time we get a windstorm, there goes the power. So what happens when the power goes out? You call them up. Do you get credit? Not one. But you get charged for the wind, $1.18 to fix the problem. And this seems to be an ongoing thing since I've been here. And they're building the substation down there on Putney Road. And I figured, I said to myself, you know what, if cow poop can save us, so be it. You know, I looked at the cost analysis, like you said, Tim, and I'm a graph guy. I love graphs. It shows, depicts a lot more, you know, the amount of scope of how much energy one's using, not just in the summer, which we used a lot, but also in the winters. And I don't want to be like what happened with Texas. My heart goes out to those guys. And God forbid we get a storm like that here. The wind alone knocked out a power. Imagine a powerful snowstorm like that. To have that alternative sustainability to keep us going would mean a lot, not just to the people, but to the hospitals and a lot of other things that are going on that we need to keep us going so that we're not caught in that same position. So I would suggest maybe there's an old saying, breaking a few eggs to make an omelet, because we are boldly going where no one has gone before. These are uncharted territory, but it's okay. We're a nation that has charted territory and expanded and did things in a good way, and some in bad and made mistakes, but this is all part of, you know, the future of us making it and moving ahead. And I just think this is something that we all need to make that small investment in, considering the amount of money that GMP is taking. And they keep tacking on new stuff. Sure, we have energy efficient, but then that turns back around and goes back into their pocket. So the trade-off with that, with this, I would think would be profitable, efficient, and sustainable for many people, also with the new housing that's being built as well too. So at some point, maybe you guys should consider that, looking that into the equation of what Green Mountain Power is doing for the consumers. Are they really helping out financially, especially in a crisis like this with people with money strapped? It's tight, you know, and if we can find an alternative to help out during that time, then this will help us, you know, move into the future of a cleaner, more safer, more healthier environment instead of relying on big corporation. Because that's what you're at the hands of, big corporation, and they call the shots. So you really don't have too much alternative. Where else are you going to get energy? Green Mountain Power. So is this something like this thought about, maybe you could think about and consider and weigh that in along with your final decision. I appreciate the time you guys took. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. All right. Board, we're through our hands, except for Liz's.
Well, I would like to propose a motion and see if people like it, want to amend it, whatever. I move to accept with appreciation the Energy Committee's work concerning cow power, and to invest in enough cow power to be carbon neutral in the town's electricity, 6%, and to create and invest at least $30,000 yearly in a fossil fuel-free fund or an energy efficient and reduction fund. And this fund will be used to finance projects to directly reduce Brattleboro's energy use and or carbon emissions using the guidance of our Energy Committee, our staff, and others.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Should we go forward with that? Yes. Well, Daniel, I know, let's see, in our tradition, I'm not sure. Daniel, say something if you'd like to propose something.
Well, yeah, let's see. So I
Liz,
would
sorry,
change this.
let me just honor our traditions. Liz, are you open to hearing what Daniel has to say at this moment?
I certainly am.
Okay, thank you.
So I suppose this is an amendment to Liz's motion, and it would be exactly the same as what she said, but instead of 30,000, I would say 70,000. And the reason why I picked 70, just to give you some sort of context, I didn't just pluck it out of the air. I know that when the Energy Committee did an analysis of electric use of buildings, and if it was just like buy all electricity from cow power, the 100% figure would have been 80,000 or something like that.
Got it.
Something like that. I would need to dig up an old memo or something, but I think 70 is a bolder step, and I'm conscious of like how much it costs to transform our energy systems, and I would like to, if we're going to choose to make an investment, that it would be a significant enough investment to make a difference.
Okay, Liz, it's totally up to you to accept or decline that friendly amendment.
I accept, because I think it'll allow us to invest a certain amount in cow power, but then invest a considerable amount in Brattleboro's own transformation to be more efficient with its electricity going forward.
I smell an agreement.
Oh, yeah, Peter, I was going to give you the opportunity to say if this is terrible.
Oh, no.
Oh, you're muted. Stand by.
Thank you. Not terrible at all. No, I wanted to offer a suggestion about how to make sure that the select board and others who have been engaged in this know more explicitly how the boundaries of the uses of this fund and how it will function and how decisions will get made about what is a useful thing. So the framing you've done for tonight, I think, is sufficient in terms of the intention of the board to establish a fund. Right now, the amount that you're discussing is $70,000 in that fund alongside the cow power decision. And I think we all understand the general purposes for which you intend to create this fund. What I want to be careful about is that because this is happening in the middle of this discussion that was the information before you is about something else. I want to be careful that what you're actually committing to with this funding is clear to you and clear to the community. So my only suggestion is keep going in the direction you're going if that's where you want to be tonight. And I think that's sufficiently clear for tonight. And I would just ask that our shared expectation be that at a future meeting, we come back with information from the Energy Committee and the staff to frame this fund more explicitly so that you can either say, yeah, that's it, that's what we wanted, or work with that and make sure that it becomes what you want it to be.
Okay.
Right. So just to clarify, you're saying, because Liz made reference to finance projects for reduced energy use, et cetera, just to be a little more specific in the future about that.
And how it will function. So my suggestion is my suggestion doesn't affect in any way the wording of the motion. And I'm certainly not speaking to the amount of the funding. I think you can proceed as you're proceeding right now, if that's where at least 3 of you, maybe all 5 of you want to be. I just wanted it to not go unsaid that some clarification and formality to the creation of this fund will be helpful in the longer run when we come to making decisions about spending it.
Okay. Thank you. And I think, well, Ian has a hand up, and I just wanted to ask Liz to restate it, and then we could still continue discussion. But I just want to make sure that if the hands up are concerning the motion versus the overall argument, that everything's clear. Ian, you raised a hand.
Yeah, I just have a couple clarifying questions. Liz, do you want to restate it? Would that be?
Oh, sure. Let's see. To accept with appreciation the Energy Committee's work concerning cow power, to invest in enough cow power to be carbon neutral in the town's electricity, which is 6%, and to create and invest $70,000 in a fossil fuel free fund or energy efficiency and reduction fund. This fund will be used to finance projects to directly reduce Brattleboro's energy use and or carbon emissions using the guidance of our Energy Committee, town staff, and others.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I ask a couple quick questions, Tim?
Yeah, please.
So I guess the first one is this a one-time 70,000? So the cow power thing was one time this year, if we were looking at the 37 versus the 6, but then we would look at it next year. Would this just be a one-time 70,000 for this fund? And then my other question is just, as the board, what are we giving any kind of direction back to the Energy Committee on renewable? Whether we're still looking to try to get 100% renewable, and if so, is that something that they should be continuing to look at other ways to do that? Or I guess that's the other part to this, because this doesn't answer that question. And if the point is just that we don't think it's worth the expense, then maybe we can provide that clarity.
I think I can take a crack at it really quick from my perspective, clearly. Oh gosh, just lost my train partially. Going backwards, I think, oh shoot. I think what I was just about to say is gone. That's because I'm getting older.
Well, I'm already there.
Oh, good, Liz. And then I'll know probably when you start talking. Go ahead.
Well, let's think about that. Let's think we were going to be thinking about the cow power as a yearly with notification to trigger whether or not it would continue at either amount. So if we're thinking the 6%, let's assess that every year. And similarly with this fund, let's assess that every year. And then also, I think it's also very important. We might want to have something like I know the Planning Commission and the Energy Commission used to have like a joint meeting, or the DRB, so that we have a general discussion of what the select board views are on and what the Energy Commission views are. And so that there's like an exchange of information and views back and forth. I think that would be really helpful for the town as a whole. And I would hope that Oscar and his committee would be open to just to have like a community roundtable about this subject. I think going forward would probably be very helpful.
Okay, both my things came back to me, if you don't
Okay,
mind.
go ahead.
That was good, Liz. Thank you. First of all, I was saying going backwards because I wanted to say that I had one-on-one conversations with both Django and Oscar after the last meeting because it got weird, and we chatted things out a little bit. And in those conversations, especially the one with Oscar, he expressed that it would be helpful to the Energy Committee to know the will of the board with the type of work that they are working on. And I thought that was very reasonable suggestion. And so, because sometimes like it can be confusing, like what's the will of the board type thing. And now we have a new board going forward. And so I was going to suggest that we just each write up a few sentences of what we think they should be working on. They can compare the notes, and that could spur the conversation that Liz was referring to just then. And just as far as like the idea of the fund as proposed, seems to me like it has to be every year because it needs to build up. Or if something is really good and it only costs $70,000, absolutely you can drain that fund for a good project. But it might take a couple years and we might have something that comes down the pike and the timing is right. So it seems to me that you start a fund and you assume that it's going to be funded at least the level that you initially funded at every year. Otherwise, funds don't grow, right? So
I agree.
I don't know if that
Is there
needs to
specific
be.
wording, Peter, that you would advise us to make that question and answer happen?
Thanks for asking. My suggestion is, sorry to be repeating myself, but I think for you to pass what you're doing tonight, if this is what you're rallying around, take this action tonight as the direction that you're going to invest $70,000 in this way for this fiscal year, and you are intending to create this fund. I don't think you need to change any of the words of the motion to have that be the impact of this motion. And if we all have a shared understanding that we're going to come back to you with some definition to this and how it might work, and just enough meat on these bones so that everybody knows what the next, what you've said is really helpful about the involvement of different parties and the types of uses. I'm only concerned that because this is happening without sort of prior direction of an intention and then some work around the framing and then you being able to adopt that and say, yes, that's what we meant, or not exactly that, we want this other thing. To avoid misunderstandings later, I think it would be really useful if we just all have an expectation that, it might be 2 weeks from tonight, it might not be until a meeting or two after that, but when we're ready to come back to you with what we think implements your intentions, you get a chance to review it on paper in a more formal manner with input from the community and say, yeah, that's our program, or tinker with it to create what you want it to be. That's all. But it doesn't impact the action you would take tonight if the board wishes to support the motion that you've made with Daniel's amendment.
Okay. So, and I just wanted to say oh, sorry, Ian.
No, please finish.
I was just going to say that my grimaces, which I can never hide, I have terrible poker face. My grimaces to the 70,000 has more to do with not that that's a fine commitment to make, I think, because these are going to be, again, real money that we would spend anyway, or could be money that will save us money, hopefully, and accomplish the goals that we discussed. But it's because it wasn't warned at those numbers that made me a little uncomfortable, but I still think it's within, the discussion parameters. And that's why I made the face at the 70, Daniel. It wasn't so much that I was penny pinching, to use that overused phrase. Because these are investments. Okay, so I'll take Ian.
So just to clarify, as this has shifted, can we have the 6% cow power investment also now be the thing that's discussed a year from now, be it a line item if that's the way it goes, or if it's just something that's brought up? Because just like if it was at the 37, I think it's still an investment in a premium that the board should discuss again. And just so that's an understanding of the board, that's what I'd like.
I agree.
I think so, because that program could get really bad, or it could get so much better that we want to make a further investment, right?
Exactly.
Could go either way. Okay, I think I was going to try to attempt to piece together a little bit of the motion, say the motion, and then take the hands, because we have town staff, we have 2 members of our energy committee with hands up. So
do you want me to read it again?
Oh yeah, well, yeah, okay, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, I was going to state it, and then yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I move to accept with appreciation the Energy Committee's work concerning cow power, to invest in enough cow power to be carbon neutral in the town's electricity, 6% reviewed annually, and to create and invest in at least $30,000 yearly to be reviewed annually in a fossil fuel free fund or energy efficiency and reduction fund. This fund will be used to finance projects to directly reduce Brattleboro's energy use and or carbon emissions using the guidance of our energy committee, town staff, and others.
And just a correction, I think the number is 70,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. It was not my intention to say anything other than that.
Okay, that is the motion currently on the floor to get rid of that formal piece of business. And now let's have Stephen Dotson come up. And depending on what he says, maybe we'll bring everybody up. I don't know. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. I just wanted to make a few points about the opportunity that's here and how you could expect such a fund to work. I also wanted to just thank you for some really innovative thinking and forward sight, I think. Both what Liz said about cross-committee collaboration and figuring out those solutions, that's key to my work, and that's actually part of what's going on right now around solar siting. We have conservation, ag, planning, and energy all collaborating to try and come up with this criteria. So I expect more of that. But Daniel's point earlier about the audit and the efficiency work that's been done to this date is really on point. A lot of what we can do within buildings that aren't set to be replaced or renovated has been done. So I just want you to understand the opportunity that would probably exist for this is more in the energy generation that we could do for new buildings moving forward and big renovations. And what I mean by that is often we're looking at a payback period of 5 years to see if something is worth doing. If we have a capital investment up front, that can extend that payback period, because all these, whether it's generation or efficiency, there's a payback period involved. So this makes those projects more feasible and gives us the match for some of those grants that can allow us to do innovative things. So just to keep in mind, there's probably more to be spent on energy generation moving forward in new things, and places where we haven't had that payback period before could change because we have this fund. So that part is just what I want you to understand is the landscape we're approaching with this.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. I'll go ahead and take Django. And Django, do you want Oscar to join you, or would you like the floor to yourself?
I'd like the floor to myself real quick. And I'm not going to say too much. First off, I'd just like to say that if we do establish this fund, I think that we need to call it the Fossil Fuel Free Fund, because then we can abbreviate it to quadruple F, which is very cool. I also think, I don't know, I can't help thinking that this is being used as a way to take us away from cow power. And I'm not a super stubborn person. No, I think 70 grand is an amazing opportunity for the town, but and maybe this is like a personal opinion, but I can't help feeling that this is kind of being used to, like, this is kind of being come up with on the fly, which is innovative thinking. And I really like that, but I just want to kind of address the fact that I don't know, I just feel like it's being used as a tool kind of to take votes away from the cow power, which we originally came here to discuss. And we've had many members of the community come up to talk about cow power. So I just feel like we kind of got off that track, and I'm okay with 70,000, but didn't we come here to talk about cow power, and didn't we come here to vote on whether or not we're, like, one of the solutions that Stephen brought forward? Like, this is innovation at its best, but it's also like, I don't know, I can't help feeling like it's, like I said before. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
I think I get where you're coming from. And, you know, I didn't know Liz was going to propose this alternative path. And so for me, it's on the fly a little bit. But if I know my fellow board members, and I think after a couple of years I do a little bit, I'd imagine you've spent some time in the last several days, Liz, pondering this, and it's not on the fly for you. And so this is where I kind of trust, you know, the other board members, that Liz and Tim, when we had the discussion about cow power, made no bones about it, that they didn't think it was, you know, an investment that they wanted to make at that level. And we had a disagreement on that day. And I think that this alternative path, you know, we still get a small investment in this program, which we could in future change if, you know, if that is the will of the board and the people. But it also has opened up this other avenue that I didn't even see open at all. And where I want to go with my work on the board, and I don't know if Ian, you've checked your email, but we do get another shot of this for a little while longer. And where I'd like to go on this board is making real change happen here. The investment in cow power was good. Liz has opened up this other opportunity that I'm now trying to leverage into something a little bigger and that will have real impact in our town. And I'm hopeful. Always.
Oh, Ian or Liz?
Oh, Liz.
Go ahead,
quick.
Ian.
Oh, I was going to pile on the praise, Liz. I think it's really great. No, I think it is innovative, and it's on the fly for me as well. But I also trust that this is something that you've thought about. I also like the idea that, you know, while the larger amount to cow power is a premium to get us to 100% renewable, this amount in this fund is going to go actively into saving us money and making us more efficient in the actual energy we use. And we're going to continue to talk about renewable. We're going to continue to talk about carbon neutral. Yeah, I think it's the kind of, I'm really grateful, Liz, for this, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm really excited to move forward with it.
Well, I'm excited that you're excited, but I must say that, you know, my goal was to really kind of split the baby, to give the 6% to cow power, but to have something more local and more directly energy efficient within Brattleboro, like as a measure. And the innovative idea is Tim's, and I give him all the credit for coming up with this fund idea, because I was searching for such a wonderful thing, and I really appreciate the collaboration. And you know, I just think that this is a way to achieve a couple of things. So I thank you.
It was certainly a team effort. Anyway, oh, Brandy.
I just wanted to say that I definitely hear where Django's coming from, and I think any of us have felt that way, and all of us should at any time feel that way, because it's good to have that gut instinct to say, when things pivot really fast, wait, did I just get blindsided? Did I, you know, what changed in the game that I need to know about? And that is a skill you should never lose. Always listen to that in life. This opportunity for me is it presents more than what I wanted. You know what I mean? So would I have gone for 100% cow at the full level? Yes, I would have, but I like the fund. I think when we're thinking future, it's more strategic. And so when I'm okay with moving on the fly when I see that I'm getting a decent amount of what I think is good and what I want, plus more than what I want, because that's what I think is going to be good for the community. But I say that confident in my years of doing this, but also wanting to acknowledge that real feeling of, wait, what just changed in this game? Am I being fast talked? Are things moving away from where I want it to be? And to say, like, if you're going to be in politics or community service, it's good to never lose that question, that pause. So
Thank you. Oscar has had a patient hand up for a while.
Hello. I won't take long. I've been sort of spending the last few minutes staring into space with my eyes narrowed, kind of like this, just trying to think this over. Obviously I'm optimistic about it. It's obviously more money, and there's plenty to spend it on that will have value. I think a lot of it will depend on the details of how we define this thing, which sounds like it'll come next meeting or at a future meeting. But I think it could be good, and it could be a good compromise that invests a substantial amount of money in this thing that is important, and also I hopefully addresses some of the concerns. I mean, we talked, Tim, and I hear you on the slipperiness of renewable electricity and cow power and all that stuff. And so if this can be sort of a middle ground, I think it could turn out really well. So I'm good. I'm optimistic. So that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Oscar. I appreciate that. And don't forget that if you remain on the committee, you're going to be key to helping us figure out those projects that we'd be looking for. I guess I'm going to take Kurt Dime's hand. He has already spoken to this, but has strong feelings. So
thank you. I'll be brief. I feel things are moving along, and Tim, I want to thank you. I think you made the big step was to drop the technicality about the buildings and, you know, to lump it all together. That was great. I would just say, I hope Dan could make an amendment to the amendment and say 37%, go back up to 37%, and the 70,000. 6% is really not quite in the middle at all. It's not in the middle, but I say do it 37% and the 70,000 for the fund, and you've got yourself a winner. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thanks. All right, board. Well, seeing no more hands, and we have a motion on the floor, which I'm going to attempt to bring it back. So the motion is, Liz has made a motion to accept with appreciation the Energy Committee's work concerning cow power, to invest in enough cow power to be carbon neutral in the town's electricity, 6% reviewed annually, and to create and invest at least $70,000 yearly in a, quote, fossil fuel free fund, end quote, to be used to finance projects directly, to directly reduce Brattleboro's energy use and or carbon emissions using the guidance of our Energy Committee, town staff, and others. Did I get that right? All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. And I want to say it's always more satisfying to get to 5-0 because it feels more authentic. That's one of the things I didn't say before. Okay, we have other business.
But not other business.
When we get to 9 p.m. and we're just getting to new business, but I don't. Okay, so the next item is a discussion of a grant, downtown transportation grant for Depot Street parking lot. Peter and Patrick is going to help.
Yes, Patrick will come into the meeting now and present this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sue, welcome.
I'm going to be off camera for a second, but I'm listening, just so you know.
Thank you, sir. So good evening, everybody. Patrick Moreland, Assistant Town Manager, here this evening to seek the board's support for a grant application to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for a downtown transportation grant in the amount of $100,000 to be used for the expansion of the Depot Street parking lot. And before I talk a little bit about the program and how this particular proposal fits within the program guidelines, I think it might be worthwhile to speak briefly to the context in which this request is coming forward and to talk a little bit about how we got ourselves here. I think most of you on the board will recall that it was in November of last year that Amtrak made an announcement that there would be a new passenger rail station in Brattleboro. It was a wonderful announcement. The town and Amtrak had been working for 3.5 years approximately on this project, and they were to make the announcement. Immediately thereafter, at your December 1 meeting last year, staff brought Amtrak's plans. We took a look at the station layout, the footprint of the building and how it's situated. And one of the things that was obvious right up front is that the new station was proposed to be built on the east side of the trains tracks, as opposed to the west side where it is now in the basement of the museum. One of the implications for that was immediately obvious, that being that the new station as proposed would consume roughly 10 or 11 parking spaces within the Depot Street parking lot. And so staff at the same time brought forward a plan. It was labeled at the time option D. It was from a body of work that staff had worked with an engineer on to look at some options. Staff made a recommendation to the board that we proceed with option D, because what it would do would be to expand the Depot Street parking lot by 35 spaces, yielding a net increase in parking spaces at this new facility of 25 spaces. The approximate cost of the project was $365,000, of which we only had $250,000 that had been set aside by representative town meeting a few years earlier for ADA related work associated with the train station. And the way in which this came about is town meeting had originally set aside those funds for ADA improvements to the facility, but as the project evolved and moved across the train tracks, the way in which the town could support that ADA work was by supporting the expansion of the Depot Street parking lot. So the board at that time asked staff to move forward expeditiously with plans to develop an expanded Depot Street parking lot. Since that time, staff has submitted the project to the Wyndham Regional Commission Brownfields program, which was accepted in December. That's going to assist us with amending the cap. As many of you will recall, the green space across from the Depot Street parking lot is a brownfield. And so there's going to need to be some disturbance of that cap. And so the corrective action plan, I believe that's what it's called, corrective action plan, that defines how that cap will work needs to be amended because of this project. The assistance through the Brownfield program will also help with the historic preservation review of the archery building and for materials testing at the archery building. Last month, the board authorized an engagement with Stevens and Associates to develop a final design of the project and to develop construction documents to use in a bidding process with a project that's intended to be completed this calendar year. And that's a pretty important point I'd like to remind folks about. The Amtrak project is going to occur the following year. And therefore, it's important for the town to expand the parking at this location this year. If we didn't, then when Amtrak comes along and begins to build their project, they're going to take up the entire parking space with material storage and construction trucks, et cetera. So the only way in which to preserve the public's access to this area would be to sequence the projects with us performing the parking lot first and then Amtrak following along the next year. Incidentally, since that time, the Wyndham Regional Commission has engaged Stone Environmental as their consultant to work on the cap on our behalf. Stevens and Associates, our designer there, has begun bi-weekly meetings with Amtrak so as to have the finished product down there look like one seamless product, even though it's two different projects being put forward by two different actors, the town on the parking lot side and Amtrak on the station side. So with all that said, it brings us to the discussion of the request tonight. We're seeking the board's support for this grant application, and it's for a downtown transportation grant, which it's a nice grant program, but sometimes it can be difficult to have projects, particularly large projects like this, that are completely eligible. There are three primary characteristics. One, the project needs to be on municipal property, and clearly we can check that box with this project. The second is that it's got to be for new infrastructure. This program is not intended to replace maintenance of existing infrastructure. So it's got to be about building something new, which again, clearly this is. And lastly, that it's got to be located in a designated downtown, which of course, Brattleboro is fortunate to have a state designated downtown. And this particular project fits right within the boundaries of that downtown district. So there is a gap in our funding for this project. This is a grant application that we are going to be highly competitive on, and it's a really good fit for an important community need. One of the other interesting things about this particular grant program is that in addition to the select board's authorization to submit the application, they ask to find out if the project has been recommended by the Planning Commission. This project was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting last night. I was not present at that meeting. My colleague Sue Fillion was, and I would turn it over to her to tell you a little bit about the discussion last night.
Thank you. Sue, before you proceed, I just want to check in with Daniel. We lost him for a moment. Did everything come through? Or? Oh, we don't hear you. Sorry. Let's see.
Yeah, it just quit on me for some reason.
Okay, but
I am back.
Okay, you'll catch up. You're okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. My
All
thing
right.
is not working in the way I want it to, but I'll get to that.
Thanks, Sue.
All right, thank you. So yes, the Planning Commission discussed, the grant application, and they voted 4-1 to recommend that the town apply for this grant. In their motion to recommend, they added a sentence that reads, "The Planning Commission intends to advocate for a smaller parking lot that respects the proximity to the river and other valuable uses for the property." And I do want to say that this project is going to require site plan approval from the Development Review Board. And the Planning Commission understands that this is an opportunity that they would have to weigh in during that process. There is, tension over what is the right amount of parking there. When the Amtrak project went before the DRB in December, I was at that meeting as well. And that project is resulting in the loss of parking, and there were DRB members concerned that so much parking was going to be lost. So I think that the opportunity to advocate is there. And if there's opportunities along the way, I'm sure the Planning Commission will do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Less parking, that's an interesting concept. Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And I think I'd be happy to take any questions. I think you guys are pretty familiar with the concept of the project. This is to help underwrite the cost. We mentioned back in December, we would be coming forward with, engagements for engineering. We've done that. We mentioned that we'd be coming back with potential grant applications, and that's why we're here this evening.
Great, thank you. Liz?
Well, I applaud this work. I think, as we've mentioned before, Amtrak's actions towards the town of Brattleboro are a gift. It's a wonderful thing. It's an opportunity not only for, adding to our sustainable transportation diet in Brattleboro, but also it's an economic development bonus, and also traffic, parking lots are traffic interceptors. So putting on my urban planning hat, it really allows for, more people to use public transit, and that's a great thing. So I'm all in favor of this, and I'm really pleased that there's grant exists that we can apply for. And I know that Sue is really good at getting brownfield grants.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I actually keep going back to the bridge and people being able to drive down there, especially people who don't have the mobility that everyone does. Be able to park and walk over that bridge or ride over that bridge. So I think it's pretty key for multiple uses to have good parking. Ian, sorry about that. I interrupted your hand.
No worries. I'm just curious if there are any community members who are interested in that DRB meeting. Is that something that we have an idea of when it will be, or is it still pretty far out? I'm directing that question at
Sue or Patrick.
Sue or Patrick.
And I'm passing it off to Sue.
My guess is we're probably a couple of months out. I mean, probably, maybe May. I mean, this is just a guess, knowing that engineering work needs to take place. There needs to be some coordination with the brownfields, and then just kind of the deadlines for being on the DRB. So I don't really see it much before May.
Okay. Just trying to get that DRB attendance up.
Yeah. They don't get the views that we do.
No, but it's fun.
Good.
Okay. Other board members? Otherwise, we could take a motion. I think it's been well explained. Thank you to staff.
Yeah.
Anyone got a motion?
I have a really long motion. Do you guys want that one?
Yes.
No. Oh, no.
No, it's not really long.
So this is what happened. I got all turned around when I got bumped out.
It's in all caps.
I have a shorter one.
Yeah, you do the short one, Liz. I want to do that big one. It's fun to read the long ones.
Okay. I move to authorize the application for a downtown transportation grant in the amount of $100,000.
Thank you, Liz. Liz has moved to authorize the application for a downtown transportation grant in the amount of $100,000. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
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 5-0. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Sue. Next up, we have a VCDP housing stabilization grant. See, I got VCDP right, but couldn't say stabilization. Who's going to tell us about this? Patrick, I should have known. Thank you.
So, okay, so this is a really unusual situation. Let me start just by stating that. What is being asked, what the board is being asked to do tonight is, within the same meeting, to adopt a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application, and then moments later to accept that grant application, or to accept the grant agreement with the state of Vermont. And so I think I should explain a little bit about what's going on here. This is a situation where the state of Vermont is asking its partners, in this case, the town of Brattleboro, to facilitate the flow of federal funds that are directed towards residents that are experiencing economic hardship as a result of COVID-19. This is an attempt to expedite those federal dollars into our community. The state, through the Vermont Community Development Program, is relying upon existing pathways of funding. For example, the State of Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the town of Brattleboro, and our partner, Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, to establish a flow of funds so that they can operate a program to assist families in need that are income qualifying with rental assistance, mortgage assistance, even utility assistance, as long as it's directly COVID-19 related. And so we've been asked to sort of expedite this process to get this flow of funds open and flowing as quickly as possible, and to seek authorization to submit the grant and accept the grant in the same night. And the state of Vermont has actually even waived the typical public hearing and notice requirements for this meeting. Essentially, they're pulling out all the stops and asking us to do the same so that they can open up this spigot and provide financial resources to help needy families in our community and in other communities across Vermont. So specifically, the board is asked to adopt the resolution authorizing the submission of a consortium grant application with Montpelier, Vermont, for a VCDP implementation grant in the amount of $774,646,000 to support Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and their partner, Downstreet Housing and Community Development, to provide eligible households that have been affected by COVID-19 with housing-related financial counseling and emergency financial assistance. And then second to that, the board is asked to adopt the resolution authorizing the town manager to execute the grant agreement. In effect, rather than at this critical moment trying to put together a new program, trying to put together a new department to help assist families, the state is choosing to piggyback on existing relationships with trusted partners like the town of Brattleboro, like Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, entities that have successfully managed federally funded projects for years and years and years. And so the board is asked to expedite this process with the state, and so that we can facilitate the flow of funds and begin to help families in our community and in other communities across Vermont.
Thank you, Patrick. Daniel.
This is so interesting to me. It's sort of what I do for my day job. And I'm kind of curious, so I work at SEVCA. We often work with clients who are Wyndham and Windsor tenants. When the grant says eligible households, does it mean eligible households who are connected with Wyndham and Windsor through like a tenancy agreement, or does it mean larger than that?
I think it's much larger than that. I don't believe it is exclusively to Wyndham and Windsor or Downstreet's tenants, or my understanding is that this is more broad than that, that it is for rental assistance, utility assistance, even mortgage assistance for folks who own their own home, but they must be behind in payments, and it must be directly COVID related.
All right, that's great. Let's get to it.
Yeah, I have a small question, but Liz.
Well, I just think this is wonderful. I mean, this is what we've been asking for since COVID started, because we know that our our citizens are impacted. And I too have an understanding that Wyndham Windsor is just the service agent for the population who may be in need. Anyway, it's wonderful.
Ian?
Yeah, I have a quick question, but I think first I'll just say I think this is what everybody kind of wants to hear, right? We got these funds, everyone sees the need. Let's expedite this. Let's get this to the people who need it as quickly as possible. Like, we're in a pandemic. Yes. So that's awesome. And Patrick, thank you so much for explaining that so succinctly and so well. I definitely read this bit of material a number of times to sort of try to figure it out. My one question is this novel, like using existing funding paths or is this something, I guess, maybe could you just, if you know, could you just explain to me if in a normal time, if we weren't in this crunch for getting it done as quickly as possible, would they create the paths themselves? Is that usually how it goes?
I think making use of existing programs is nothing new. I've never seen state government act this aggressively in the at least 15 years that I've been familiar with this program. I've never seen anything like it. So I think that just speaks to the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick, is Down Street, are they north? Where are they?
They are Lamoille, Washington, and oh boy, one other county. I've got it in the memo.
So they're just the designated equivalent of.
I believe they're just above just above Windsor County, but
okay.
I mean, just a quick second. It's here in the memo.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I think so. Wyndham, Windsor, Orange, Lamoille, and Washington County.
Oh, I apologize if it was in the memo.
No problem.
Yes, I see it now. Okay. All right, it sounds like we've got a lot of nods and a desire to move forward. Let me just take Gary's hand up. Gary. Hello.
Yeah, hi, Patrick. That's great news that you're spending down for Montpelier, Gary Sharp District 2. I guess my question, within a day or two, once the COVID relief is signed, will that conflict with this new adoption? It's not, because I was going to ask Daniel that too, because I know this money is going to be released too from the new COVID relief packet, the 1.9 million trillion, is it million trillion dollars we're getting? So I was just curious how that would work.
TBD.
I'm just wishing, but I just didn't know how that worked, because they helped the last time with me with electric and with broadband. So I was just curious what was inclusive with. Is this basically just for Windsor housing or for Brattleboro housing, or how does that work? So if anybody asks if they can get help, I know how to talk intelligently to them.
Sure. This is a program that is being funded with federal dollars that were one of the previous COVID bills that came to the state of Vermont. And the state of Vermont made a determination that what they want to do with this money is to get it in the hands of people who are behind on their rent, behind on their mortgage, and behind on their utilities. And so they're making use of the fact that Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust has a body of staff, and they work with clients, and they're using that vehicle to provide counseling and to provide emergency back rent or back mortgage payments to try and help bring people, bring some stability to housing within households that are in trouble as a result of COVID. Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust has a strategic partnership already with an organization called Downstreet Housing and Community Development. They work in Lamoille, Washington, and Orange counties north of here. They do essentially the same type of work just north of here in a different place in Vermont. And the strategic partnership that those two already have is a consequence of what's called the scattered site grant work that we do with them already. They manage housing rehabilitation for low-income households. And so the manner in which they do that, they've got a partnership as to who does the administration and who does the mortgage write-ups and who does, you know, all the paperwork and who meets with the clients, et cetera. So you've got these two organizations. They work with low-income households across 5 counties, and they're being given a big chunk of money to distribute to eligible households in their service areas. And the specifics of who will be eligible, I think will be forthcoming from those two entities. I hope that's helpful.
I'm going to assume it is. Thank you. All right. Well, Daniel.
I'd love to make a motion if anybody's interested.
Yeah, it's the short one.
Yes. All right. I move to adopt a resolution authorizing submission of a consortium grant application with Montpelier, Vermont for a VCDP implementation grant CV in the amount of $774,646 to support the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and its partner, Downstreet Housing and Community Development, to provide eligible households that have been affected by COVID-19 with housing-related financial counseling and emergency financial assistance, and to adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute the grant agreement with the state of Vermont and all other associated documents necessary for the performance of the grant-funded activities. Are you still there?
No, but whatever you say, dear.
I nodded off for a moment, but I'm still with you. Thank you, Daniel. I think, okay, I'm going to repeat it. I was going to cheat. Daniel has made a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing submission of a consortium grant application with Montpelier, Vermont for a VCDP implementation grant CV in the amount of $774,646 to support the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust and its partner Downstreet Housing and Community Development to provide eligible households that have been affected by COVID-19 with housing-related financial counseling and the emergency financial assistance, and to adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute the grant agreement with the state of Vermont and all other associated documents necessary for the performance of said grant-funded activities. All those board members in favor, please raise your hand and say aye for me.
Aye.
Aye.
And none opposed. That's 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a 5-0 night.
Yeah, remarkably. Thank
Don't
you.
jinx it. Are there any more votes?
Good team. Good team.
No, no more votes.
No more motion, most likely, except one. But before that, we need to announce committee board vacancies. Who wants to do that? Does Peter want to do that? You haven't talked too much since you did talk a lot in the early part of the meeting.
I did, but I've had such a long lull now. I'll be happy to read the vacancies.
Thank you.
So these are the vacant positions for which people can apply to become involved in town government on various boards and committees. And at a future meeting, the board will consider making appointments to fill these vacancies. We have currently 3 vacancies on the ADA committee, 5 vacancies on the Arts committee, 1 vacancy as a town of Brattleboro representative, appointed select board representative to the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships Board, 1 vacant position on the Citizens Police Communications Committee, 2 vacant positions on the Conservation Commission, and 1 each on 4 additional bodies: the Development Review Board and a vacant alternate position, the position of Inspector of Lumber, Shingles, and Wood, 1 seat on the Planning Commission, and the town's appointed seat to the Senior Solutions Advisory Council.
Lots of opportunity there.
Lots of opportunity. Very opportunities.
Indeed. Thank you for doing that. I encourage everyone to join us with this rewarding experience. And speaking of rewarding experiences, I would like to be probably the first to officially, at this level, congratulate Daniel Quip, Ian Goodnow, and Jessica Gelter from what looks to be, I'm not sure they're officially certified, but those are the results of the election.
Yeah.
And
Woo!
I look forward to working with that board in the coming year. And we will also all wish Brandy the best of luck. And I'm sure we haven't seen the last of Brandy's stuff.
Oh, no.
I wrote you in for school board, just so you know.
A lot of people did.
Oh.
You want to know a secret?
Put that bug in your ear.
I wrote myself in and I didn't even want to run.
Had I known.
No.
Gary.
Say something.
Gary. Okay, well, Gary, we want to go home, but why don't you jump in?
We already are home.
I just want to say congratulations to you guys. Did you say committee openings? There's a few.
No, Gary, no.
Or should I just wait for RTM, or I might add one more. I'm just thinking, it's gonna be.
Don't you serve on most of them?
Well, I think 3 now. I'm down to 3.
Hey, that's a good pitch, though. Everyone out there who's listening and watching, be like Gary.
Get out there, rock the vote, and
serve
join
on
your committees.
Yeah,
get involved, make it happen. You can make a difference. I love it.
No.
I appreciate it, guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys RTM and serving alongside with you guys. I'm really proud of you. Have a great day, you guys. Enjoy the night and stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah,
should be our MC every night. Thanks, Gary. All right, board.
I got a motion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. Is it long or short?
It's very short. I move to adjourn.
Daniel has, they're already raising their hands. Daniel has moved to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your hand. Aye.
Good night, all.